Chapter 124. The second stage of the king profession was to completely convert one's bloodline into the king's bloodline. From then on, Zhao Fu's bloodline would not only be a simple bloodline, but it would also be able to pass on massive amounts of king's power. In actuality, there were bloodlines in the Heaven Awakened world. For example, angel, demon, and ancient race bloodlines were all more powerful than human bloodlines. As such, obtaining any bloodline would greatly increase one's stats. Zhao Fu's king's bloodline was definitely not any weaker than these bloodlines, and as Zhao Fu became stronger, this bloodline would also become more and more powerful. Bloodlines in the Heaven Awakened world were split into 24 levels. Level 1 to 3 were low-grade bloodlines, level 3 to 6 were mid-grade bloodlines, level 6 to 9 were high-grade bloodlines, level 9 to 12 were royal bloodlines, level 12 to 15 were emperor bloodlines, level 15 to 18 were sovereign bloodlines, level 18 to 21 were divine bloodlines, and level 21 to 24 were origin bloodlines. Right now, Zhao Fu's bloodline was only a level 3 low-grade bloodline because his state of Qin's bloodline was not pure. Even though he had obtained the state of Qin's legacy, it had not changed his bloodline. Most state of Qin's bloodlines were high-grade bloodlines. However, even though Zhao Fu only had a low-grade bloodline, Zhao Fu went to the Heaven Prayer platform and planned to convert his bloodline into a king's bloodline. He sat at the center of the Heaven Prayer platform and closed his eyes as he circulated his king's power. Traces of black aura rose out of Zhao Fu's body and wrapped around Zhao Fu, forming a massive black orb. Within the black orb, Zhao Fu felt a warm and comfortable feeling throughout his body, and he knew that his bloodline was continuously becoming stronger. The sun rose and set, and this continued for 3 days. The black aura slowly dissipated, turning back into strands of black aura and dissipating. Finally, Zhao Fu was revealed, sitting at the center of the black orb. At this moment, Zhao Fu's appearance had changed greatly. His originally delicate and pretty face now had a trace of dignity, a trace of coldness, a trace of nobility, and a trace of elegance. His original pair of black eyes had also become deep and terrifying, and his short black hair had grown crazily to his waist. By now, Zhao Fu's bloodline had risen to a level 9 royal bloodline, and it was many times more powerful than before. In the future, Zhao Fu's bloodline would also naturally possess king's power. After coming down from the Heaven Prayer platform, Li Si had been waiting for a long time. Seeing Zhao Fu, who had undergone a great change, Li Si suddenly felt that he did not dare to look him in the eye. He could only lower his head and say respectfully, "Your Highness, everything has been settled, and the exploration team has returned today." Hearing this, Zhao Fu nodded and then came to a room. He looked at the 3 people in front of him and said, "How do you feel about Qin Town now? What do you think?" Wang Jian bowed respectfully. "Your Highness, the 3 of us don't have any opinions. Your Highness has handled everything well, and I'm confident that Qin Town will be restored to its former glory." Zhao Fu calmly smiled and started to converse with them in detail. He wanted to understand the 3 of them better, and after chatting for a while, Zhao Fu decided which direction the 3 of them would take. He would first take a few of the generals who had not yet changed their professions, and he would also make Wang Jian a general. Wang Jian and Bai Qi were both generals, and with their abilities, they would be able to secure this position. Now, the 2 generals in Qin Town were Bai Qi and Wang Jian, and the 10 generals were Zhang Dahu Li Wen, Xiao Jian, Old Log, Dok, Sar, Lokch, Daisy, Chen Shang, and Nico. Wang Ergu and Lu Mei had both become assassins, so Zhao Fu did not plan to make them generals. Out of the 10 generals, 3 of them had gone through the general platform. Li Wen had become an undead general through the undead profession change stone, and the other 5 had gone through the Qin Town's profession change stone steel. The last one was Chen Shang, who had been spawned by the system. Because of the various buffs from the Qin village, 2 S-grade generals could spawn per month. The first was Meng Haoren, while Chen Shang was spawned when Zhao Fu changed his bloodline. Not only was he a general, but he was also S grade. After deciding on Wang Jian's role, Zhao Fu turned to Gunia, who had a cold and handsome face and gave off a cold sword aura. Gunia was SSS grade and had extremely high talent in swordsmanship. During the Warring States period, he had become a famous swordsman, and Zhao Fu had made him his personal bodyguard. With his superb swordsmanship, he was definitely able to do this. Before, when Zhao Fu had been lacking people, he had treated Bai Qi as both a general and a bodyguard. Now, Bai Qi did not need to be like this at all, and he could become a true general who could mobilize millions of soldiers and manage the military. As for Ba Qing, Zhao Fu naturally gave her the responsibility of managing the businesses. Even though there were already people managing the businesses, leaving it to Ba Qing made Zhao Fu feel much more at ease. After dealing with the three of them, Zhao Fu did not do anything for now. He had planned to do something a few days ago to open up a path to another region because there was still something he had not taken care of yet. One of the exploration teams had brought back an interesting item. This item was very special. It looked like a small temple, but it wasn't very big. It was a meter wide and a bit more than a meter tall. There was also a statue of a short old man inside the temple. He had a very long beard and held a wooden staff in his hand. He looked very amiable and amiable. Perhaps many people had guessed what this was. It was the Earth Temple. Earth Temple contains a trace of divine power that can protect a region of land. It requires sacrifices of incense. The more incense there is, the more the Earth Temple's level and stats will be increased. Current stats: crop growth time minus 10%, crop output plus 10%, resistance to natural disasters plus 5%. Compared to Western godly spirits, Zhao Fu preferred Eastern godly spirit. After all, Western godly spirits were above royal authority, while Eastern godly spirits were below royal authority. Zhao Fu felt that royal authority reigned supreme and reigned above everything else. Even gods had to submit in front of royal authority and lower their prideful heads. The Earth Temple's stats were actually quite good. Ordinary villages did not have stats like crop growth time minus 10%, crop output plus 10%, and resistance to natural disasters plus 5%. This was something that ordinary things could not have. Moreover, the Earth Temple could also be leveled up through incense. Incense was similar to faith power, but there were differences. Incense could also be used as a form of worship. Divine authority was lower than royal authority, so Zhao Fu could allow it to exist. Zhao Fu could tolerate faith, but no matter what faith it was, it had to submit to the royal authority. Zhao Fu definitely wouldn't allow Great Qin to have a situation like in the Western world where divine authority was above and royal authority below. Chapter 125. Now, it could be said that everything was caused by Zhao Fu, but to be more precise, it was because of the domineering dragon roar that pierced through the sky and shook the 9 serenities. Who in the world would not be convinced by it? These people were the pride of God, who would become the rulers of a country in the future. They would not like to be suppressed by others. What made them even angrier was that their dragons of luck could not resist this domineering dragon roar, which made them even more aggrieved. All of their faces turned red, and they gritted their teeth and roared angrily, "Qin!" At the same time, this extremely domineering dragon roar also had a very strong deterrent effect. All the forces that dared to spy on Huaxia were shocked when they heard this dragon roar that resounded through the 9 heavens and caused the sky to change color. They had to stop all their actions temporarily, because under this dragon roar, they seemed so small and vulnerable. They had to reconsider whether they were a match for Huaxia and weigh their own strength. Once again, Huaxia became the focus of the whole world, and a name resounded in their ears: Qin. Undoubtedly, Qin had become the person they paid the most attention to. They crazily wanted to know all the information about Qin, because now even a fool knew that Qin would become one of the most powerful countries in the world, the kind of power that would make them feel fear and even despair. However, they could not find any information about Qin's inheritor at all. The whole Qin state was covered with a mysterious veil. Often, the unknown darkness could arouse the deepest fear of human beings. Therefore, they crazily wanted to unveil this mysterious veil and see what Qin was like. Even presidents, prime ministers, and kings of some countries expressed their desire to meet this inheritor of Qin's state. Foreign media also rushed to report that the sleeping dragon of Huaxia was awakening, and that Huaxia would once again lead the progress of world civilization. Some media that did not like Huaxia even said in an exaggerated manner, Huaxia will unify the whole world. They will enslave all races and deprive all freedom and rights. They are the common enemy of the whole world. We must unite to resist this terrible dragon. Now, no matter which country you were from, if you hadn't heard of Qin's name, you were definitely not from this world. Of course, the ignorant people would not realize the real danger of the problem. With curiosity, they would open the website to search for all the information about Huaxia, especially the information about Qin. This inadvertently added the influence of Huaxia culture on the world. The leaders of some of the more powerful factions were not ignorant people. They knew that the real world would be devoured by the heaven-awakened world in the future, and thinking about how they might have to face China in the future, they could not help but feel deeply worried. At the same time, he ordered all his subordinates to find out information about Qin's inheritor. He thought about how to curry favor with him and rely on his powerful strength to survive. Of course, even in the face of such a domineering dragon cry, there were still people who refused to submit, such as Oda Nobunaga's descendant, Oda Kamaya. His original plan was not only to unify Japan, but also the high and mighty Huaxia. However, it seemed that his plan had been incredibly childish, and he felt incredibly powerless. Just Qin was already in existence that he had to look up to, yet he still refused to submit. His grand ideals and hot-bloodedness were suppressed to the limit by Qin's formless power. At that moment, Oda Kamaya went berserk and held a katana that gave off a blood-red light and an evil aura. He madly slashed out, destroying everything in front of him and even killing a few female attendants. Half an hour later, the disheveled Oda Kamaya stood among the corpses of a few female attendants. The blood-stained katana gave off an even brighter blood-red light, and the evil aura became even denser. This katana was the famous demon Katana Muramasa. Even the foreign countries were going crazy, let alone the people within Huaxia, who were at the center of the storm. All of the legatees had madly searched for information about Qin's inheritor, but even the Ying family had not found anything, let alone the others. As such, they disregarded everything and ordered their espers and espers to use all methods to find Qin's inheritor. However, in the end, all of them died without a doubt. After Zhao Fu had obtained Qin's inheritor, his fate had changed. He was now the son of heaven's fate, and anyone who wanted to use divination to obtain information about Zhao Fu was simply seeking death. After all, every son of heaven's fate was a person with great fate, and anyone who tried to pry into his fate would suffer a massive backlash from fate. At that moment, trying to obtain Zhao Fu's fate was incredibly dangerous, and now that Zhao Fu had received all of China's fate, no one would be able to survive the massive backlash. The Fuxi legatee took the risk of trying to divine fate, but in less than a second, he coughed up blood and collapsed to the ground, heavily injured. This was only because he had obtained Fuxi's true legacy and used some method to hide from heaven's fate. Otherwise, he would have died. CG quickly helped up the Fuxi legatee and asked caringly, "Fu Hao, are you all right?" Fu Hao lightly shook his head and felt quite apologetic as he said, "He's hidden too much heaven's fate, and the son of heaven's fate has already been formed. If you really want to unify China, he'll be your greatest enemy." Hearing this, CG sighed and said, I know, but China will be in troubled times in the future. When that time comes, countless lives will be lost, and corpses will be strewn everywhere. However, for the sake of unifying China, this is something that we have to face. There will always be someone who will rise and fall, and I don't want to be a loser." After saying this, CG's gaze became resolute. Elsewhere, Di Wutian stood at the top of a tall building and looked into the distance, giving off a cold and domineering aura. Behind him were 5 fox-like women with bloodstains at the corners of their mouth. They seemed to have used some sort of secret technique, and their faces were incredibly pale. "Humph. Qin, Di Wutian, will definitely defeat you," Di Wutian said as he coldly looked into the distance and gave off an unparalleled domineering aura. Ji Shinming and Lu Ye's expressions were quite unsightly. Their relationship with Qin was quite special. Great Zhou had been destroyed by Qin, and there was irreconcilable enmity between them. The first thing Ji Shinming would do after restoring his empire was destroy Great Zhou, but now Qin was like a massive boulder weighing down on everyone's hearts. Lu Ye's side was not in a good state either, and his expression was quite unsightly. He understood that Qin definitely would not let the Great Han off. After all, Qin had been destroyed by the Great Han, and this sort of enmity was impossible to erase. "Qin, our Great Han was able to replace you back then, and we'll do the same in the future," Lu Yi said as he gritted his teeth, his body slightly trembling. Chapter 126. At a long table in the Li family's hall, the Li family's old patriarch sat at the head of the table, and Li Baiqing sat beside him. Below them were the direct descendants of the Li family, and they all had important statuses. At that moment the Li family's old patriarch said seriously, "Now that Qin's legatee has revealed his fangs and claws, he's going to cause a huge commotion. Now that all of the factions are discussing about Qin's legatee, our Li family should also make preparations. After all, Qin's threat is too great, and even China's 4 great families have to be on guard against him. Our Great Tang, which has a weaker legacy, should be no exception. Tell us what you think." Sitting next to Li Baiqing was a middle-aged man. He was the leader of another branch of the Li family, but because Li Baiqing had obtained Great Tang's legacy, the other branches could only submit to Li Baiqing's branch. When he thought back to that scene, his face was still quite pale. As the leader of another branch of the Li family, his bloodline was incredibly pure, and he had a lot of Great Tang's fate. As such, he could hear the domineering dragons roar from within Zhao Fu's body. Back then, when he had heard that dragons roar, he had felt as if there was a ferocious black dragon that was tens of thousands of meters long in front of him. Its massive and terrifying aura caused his entire soul to tremble, so he said, "I think we should be on good terms with Qin's legatee and not become enemies with him." After hearing that dragon's roar, the other people's faces became quite pale. After all, that sort of terrifying power was not something they could contend against, so they all nodded in agreement. These people's cowardice caused the Li family's old patriarch to feel quite displeased, and he said angrily, "Look at how cowardly you all are. No matter what, we're still part of the Great Tang Empire, which was called the Celestial Empire. Are we supposed to be afraid of Qin, who doesn't have the support of the Ying family?" Hearing this, the others mustered up their courage and confidence, but they could not ignore the effects of that terrifying dragon's roar. At that moment Li Baiqing lightly smiled and said, "I think that even though Qin is in great danger, now is not the time to differentiate between friend and foe. Right now, the most important thing is to upgrade the advanced village into a town, preferably before the top 4 families. Even though 70% of China's fate is tilted towards Qin, there is still 30% left. That 30% might seem like a small amount, but it's still a huge amount. It's meant for the other Chinese legatees, so our Li family definitely can't let go of the remaining karmic luck." After listening to Li Baiqing's words, everyone present nodded and agreed with what he said. Following this, they continued to talk about Qin, and one of them said, "I'm sure that the mysterious Qin family's legatee must have had some sort of conflict with the Ying family. The Ying family has been incredibly worried, but they haven't been able to find him. Even with such a massive amount of resources, he still hasn't chosen to join the Ying family. I think that we should try to rope in Qin's legatee." Before, the Ying family openly cooperated with the Wu family, completely disrespecting our Li family. Many people agreed with this suggestion, but the crux of the matter was that there was no information about Qin's legatee at all. They had no idea who he was, let alone rope him in. Following this, the Li family's people discussed for a while more before concluding the meeting. After everyone left, only the Li family's old patriarch and Li Baiqing remained in the room. By now, the Li family's old patriarch's attitude was not as forceful as he had heard the terrifying dragon's roar. His expression became serious as he sighed and said, Qin is now the most dangerous person in China. Great Qin is now the #1 figure in all of China, and it is far more dangerous than anyone else. It might be your biggest obstacle, so don't relax for even a moment." Li Baiqing nodded earnestly and said, "I understand, Grandpa." The Li family's old patriarch put down his heavy heart and gave a kind smile before chatting with Li Baiqing for a bit longer. Following this, Li Baiqing left to take care of other matters. Looking at Li Baiqing's departing figure, the Li family's old patriarch was quite satisfied with his grandson's talent. He did not have any regrets, and he only wanted to see his grandson ascend to the throne while he was still alive. As for all the obstacles in front of him, thinking about that, the Li family's old patriarch's gaze became cold as he said, "Butler, go and find that Qin's legatee at all costs." The butler walked into the room, nodded and then left the room. Back at the Ying family, who was on the verge of going crazy, even after searching for so long, they still could not find Qin's legatee. It would have been fine if they did not know about it, as they would have taken their time to find it. However, this mysterious Qin's legatee was causing more and more trouble. Ever since the Fate legacy, the Ying family had received the attention of all of China, and now, they had received the attention of the entire world. There were at least hundreds of spies from all over the Ying family. The person who had obtained their ancestors' legacy had received all of China's fate, giving them face and making them receive the attention of the entire world. However, it was also a slap in the face, as this legatee had not joined the Ying family. After all, he had obtained Qin's legacy but had not joined the Ying family, and now he had caused such a big commotion. Wasn't this a huge slap in the face? The Ying family's branches all had bad intentions towards this Qin's legatee. They had wanted to find this legatee and use some sort of method to steal their ancestors' legacy. However, things were different now, as this Qin's legatee had not relied on anyone's help and had single-handedly raised Qin's status to that of the entire world. This was enough for them to witness his extraordinary abilities. With his current abilities, he definitely surpassed everyone in the Ying family. Even though they were somewhat unwilling to accept him as a collateral bloodline, when they thought about how he could lead Qin's family to its former glory, the Ying family truly wanted to submit to this legatee. However, even though they were about to go crazy, Qin's legatee still did not come out. The Ying family's leaders almost wanted to kneel down and beg him to come out. If it wasn't for the fact that this was too shameful, they would have long since done it. Right now, Qin's legatee's aura could only be sensed from the direction in which the fate was gathering, and it could be deduced that this legatee was in the northern part of the Midland continent. However, the northern part of the Midland continent was incredibly big, and a single region in the Heaven Awakened world was bigger than a province in the real world. There were thousands of regions in the northern part of the Midland continent, and it was 5 times the size of the real world. Even though there was a direction, it was like looking for a needle in a haystack. Chapter 127. His gaze shifted to an exquisitely decorated and luxurious room. Yingxi's expression was cold as she sat on a white sofa and said, I don't know who this ancestor's legatee is, but he's brought glory to the Ying family. However, we still haven't found him. If we wait for him to truly develop, then the entire Ying family will have no choice but to obey him. Opposite him, Wu Qingyang, who gave off a noble aura, raised her cup of coffee and lightly sipped it. A trace of a smile appeared on her face as she said, What do you think now? He's greatly affected our plans. Yingxi lightly harumphed. Now that he's obtained most of China's fate, the leaders of the Ying family's bloodlines want to make him their true legatee, and they want to hand over all of the Ying family's power to him. If he really shows himself, he'll definitely become the leader of the Ying family, and the other bloodline successors and I won't have much of a chance of inheriting the Ying family. Hearing this, Wu Qingyang faintly smiled as she replied, Then you can only rely on yourself. Take advantage of the fact that he hasn't appeared yet and develop your own faction to the point where you can establish yourself. At that time, you'll have a certain amount of authority, and even if you don't want to submit to him, you'll have the ability to protect yourself and choose to become independent. Hearing Wu Qingyang's words, Yingxi's expression became quite worried, and she said, How could it be so simple? Even though I have most of the Ying family's resources, my legacy and fate are far inferior. I'm not like your Wu family, who obtained Great Tang's fate and obtained a gold-grade legacy stone. In terms of both resources and legacies, I'm inferior to your Wu family. Kiki. Wu Qingyang laughed and said, But in terms of resources, my Wu family is far inferior to yours. Because of the Li family's suppression, the Wu family's resources are probably less than half of what you have. Right now, we can only help each other and develop our own faction before he appears. Yingxi nodded. Right now, only by becoming stronger would they have a foothold. At that moment, Wu Qingyang thought of something, and her expression became serious as she said, Right now, the problem is that we don't know when he'll show himself. The Ying family will definitely go crazy and try to find him and hand over all of their resources to him. I'm sure that before, he didn't have the ability to protect himself and was hesitant about joining the Ying family. However, as his faction develops, he'll definitely show himself in front of such a powerful force. You also heard that domineering dragons roar at that time, right? None of the people who can obtain such a legacy are good people. They walk the path of a king, and they are destined to be merciless. If he appeared, it would be good for the Ying family, but it would be dangerous for you. He's someone from the collateral family, so there's bound to be a lot of estrangement between him and the Ying family. The Ying family will definitely think of all sorts of ways to get rid of this estrangement. The most direct way is to marry a woman of the main bloodline to him. Based on your appearance, it's very likely that you're that woman. Hearing Wu Qingyang's words, Yingxi's expression became quite unsightly. Wu Qingyang was right. This was a common method used by large families. If he appeared, she would become a tool for the family to remove the estrangement between him and the family. However, Yingxi didn't want to marry someone she didn't like. However, the reality was that she couldn't resist the Ying family at all. She was born in the Ying family, and everything came from the Ying family. She couldn't resist at all, and a sense of powerlessness welled up within her heart. She felt quite uncomfortable, and she lowered her head, looking quite weak. Seeing this, Wu Qingyang understood how difficult it was to be born into a large family. Perhaps this was their fate, but Wu Qingyang wanted to change this. Looking at her good friend of many years, Wu Qingyang sat down next to Yingxi and put her arm around her shoulder as she smiled and comforted her, saying, All right, Lil Shi, perhaps things aren't as bad as they seem. As your good friend for so many years, don't worry, I'll definitely help you. Hearing Wu Qingyang's words, Yingxi felt quite touched, and she looked at Wu Qingyang gratefully as she said, Thank you, Qingyang. Seeing that Yingxi's mood had become better, Wu Qingyang returned to her normal self. Suddenly, she evilly smiled and said, How will you repay me? Hearing this, Yingxi's expression froze and she started to think. Suddenly, Wu Qingyang wrapped her arms around Yingxi and pressed her red lips onto Yingxi's. Before Yingxi could react, Wu Qingyang had already inserted her tongue into Yingxi's mouth. She pried open Yingxi's pearly white teeth and the two tongues quickly intertwined. Under Wu Qingyang's intense assault, Yingxi couldn't help but feel aroused. Her body gradually heated up and she started to pant. Wu Qingyang evilly smiled, feeling quite dissatisfied. She slowly moved her hand up Yingxi's voluptuous chest and lightly rubbed it. Yingxi immediately came back to her senses and pushed Wu Qingyang away with a red face as she said, "All right, Qingyang, stop messing around." After being pushed away, Wu Qingyang looked at the blushing Yingxi and stopped what she was doing, and she started to laugh. Seeing this, Yingxi felt quite embarrassed and angrily leapt over, and the two women started to fight. A while later, Wu Qingyang left the room and walked on the road with a few female bodyguards following behind her. Wu Qingyang's expression was no longer as relaxed as before, and it was instead quite serious as she thought to herself. Qin's legatee is incredibly dangerous to her because of Qin's legatee. Back then, under that domineering dragon's roar, she felt a trace of fear and panic for the first time. Even though she wanted to help Yingxi, was she really a match for Qin's legatee? This was the first time that Wu Qingyang had felt so unconfident. However, she couldn't be blamed for this. With her temperament, it was quite difficult for anything to affect her. The only thing that could be blamed was that dragon's roar. It was simply too domineering. Wu Qingyang wanted to go to Zhao Fu's place to see what he thought about this, but she thought that Zhao Fu was only a collateral relative of the Ying family, and his bloodline wasn't pure. It was possible that he hadn't heard that terrifying fate dragon's roar, but Wu Qingyang still wanted to come and take a look. She had always regarded Zhao Fu highly, so she wanted to ask him for his opinion. Perhaps it would be of some help to her. However, when she arrived at Zhao Fu's door, the bodyguards knocked a few times, but there was no response. Wu Qingyang guessed that Zhao Fu had most likely used the Heaven Awakened stone to enter the Heaven Awakened world. In this state, it was impossible to wake him up, and only by using an external force would he be able to leave the Heaven Awakened world. As such, Wu Qingyang didn't insist and left with her bodyguards in disappointment. In actuality, people from large families didn't spend much time in the real world, and they spent most of their time developing in the Heaven Awakened world. If it wasn't for the fact that Qin's legatee was a serious matter, most people wouldn't have been willing to leave the Heaven Awakened world. Chapter 128. Zhao Fu was about to open a path to the outside world, so he didn't know much about what was happening in the outside world. If he knew that he had received the attention of the entire world, he would have kept a low profile without hesitation. 09 Small say, Net, what do you mean by asking everyone under the heavens? With Zhao Fu's current strength, how could he dare to do such a thing? This was simply attracting hatred and public anger. Even though Zhao Fu was quite powerful, he didn't have the power to go against the entire world. It was best to keep a low profile, and Zhao Fu didn't want to act so pretentiously. Now that he had received the attention of the entire world, he felt immense pressure. Right now, Zhao Fu just wanted to silently become rich, but he had ended up in such a situation. Of course, Zhao Fu didn't know about any of this, and he would only find out after he left the Heaven Awakened world. Zhao Fu's gaze returned to the matter of opening a path to the outside world. 3 days had passed, and the den had spawned another void beast, so he could open 2 paths to other regions. Of these 2 paths, the first one that Zhao Fu thought of was Little Valley because it was the closest, and the teleportation channel there had long since been constructed. However, when he thought of Little Valley, Zhao Fu couldn't help but think of Zhang Heng. Zhao Fu had always felt that Zhang Heng was a very dangerous person, and he was quite concerned about what Zhang Heng had said about meeting him again. At this moment, Zhang Heng was riding his donkey leisurely on a quiet path in Little Valley. How could he not know about the earth-shattering changes that had taken place 3 days ago? At that time, he'd been riding his donkey in a carefree manner, and he'd casually plucked a ripe wild fruit that emanated a sweet fragrance from a tree. He was just about to take a bite when the sudden change in the karmic luck of the heavens and the earth instantly caused him to be shocked, and his entire body stiffened on the spot. For such a massive amount of fate to gather, something shocking had definitely happened. He turned and looked towards the direction where the fate was gathering, but he could only see a mass of chaos, making it impossible for him to see what was happening. Then, an extremely domineering dragon roar caused his face to turn pale. He couldn't help but exclaim, "Qin!" A long time after the vision of heaven and earth disappeared, Zhang Heng looked solemn, as if he was thinking about something. After a long time, his expression returned to normal, and he said in a low voice, "Although Qin is strong, he can't change my mind." After Zhang Heng spoke, he took a bite of the wild fruit in his hand and frowned. He felt that there was something strange in the fruit, and when he looked down, he found that it had long since been eaten by insects. He immediately threw the fruit away and spat out the fruit. The donkey was grinning from ear to ear, not giving Zhang Heng any face at all. Zhang Heng smacked the donkey's butt in dissatisfaction. On this side, Zhao Fu also thought about it and felt that he was overthinking things. There was nothing for him to fear about Zhang Heng. In any case, he had to clear all 4 paths. If he could meet Zhang Heng, he would meet him wherever he went. There was no need for him to worry about it. After thinking about it, Zhao Fu decided to open up Little Valley and 100 Bamboo for now. The reason he chose these 2 places was because they were quite close. Zhao Fu took off his dragon robe and crown and put on a black cloak to cover his appearance and body. During this time, Zhao Fu touched his waist-length black hair. As a modern person, he wasn't used to it, but he didn't mind too much. Following this, Zhao Fu took 10 or so soldiers and 5 scholars to use the teleportation channel that they had built before. After using it 20 or so times, they once again arrived at the border. They once again found a hidden place. This time, it was a cave, and in order to ensure their safety, Zhao Fu personally destroyed the entrance of the cave and built a teleportation channel here. The 5 scholars quickly finished building the teleportation channel, but because they were in a void zone, the teleportation channel couldn't be used, making it seem quite dim. At that moment, Zhao Fu took out a void crystal and gave it to one of the scholars. The scholar took the void crystal and embedded it into the center of the teleportation channel. The void crystal embedded in the center of the teleportation formation emitted a silver light that spread out. The originally dim teleportation formation was also activated, emitting a white light that was exclusive to teleportation formations. Seeing this, Zhao Fu and his people once again used the teleportation channel. This time, they didn't receive a system announcement that the teleportation channel couldn't be used. After a wave of dizziness passed, everyone came to a rocky area. There weren't any strange trees like in the Forest of Horrors here, and it was a new region. System announcement. Congratulations, you have arrived at a new region, Little Valley. You have obtained 10 achievement points. Zhao Fu had never thought that he would receive achievement points in a new region. However, 10 achievement points wasn't much, and the King's Ring's achievement points wouldn't be doubled. This made Zhao Fu feel quite confused. However, that wasn't the most important thing right now. Since he couldn't figure it out, Zhao Fu didn't continue to think about it, and he led his people to find a cave. The cave was 100 meters wide, and Zhao Fu drew the Sky Demon sword from his waist. By now, Zhao Fu had already ordered people to make a sheath for the Sky Demon sword, which was a silver-grade material called black iron. The color of the black iron matched the Sky Demon sword quite well, so it was used as the sheath. Zhao Fu circulated his king's power and slashed at the stone wall at the entrance of the cave, causing it to collapse. Zhao Fu then took out a white-grade city creation stone and pressed it against the ground, choosing to use it. A white wave of light rippled out, and a few buildings appeared. Following this, Zhao Fu ordered people to construct teleportation channels, which were soon completed. Zhao Fu stood on the teleportation channel, and 4 options immediately popped up: Ox Mountain City, Battle City, Brightfire City, and Solitary City. This was what Zhao Fu wanted. If he could construct teleportation channels in the village, he would be able to connect to the system main cities in the region. This way, he wouldn't have to construct 20 or so teleportation channels to find a system main city. Evidently, Zhao Fu didn't want to develop this village. After all, a village in the wilderness wouldn't be safe without at least a few hundred soldiers, and they would have to worry about being attacked at all times. Moreover, Zhao Fu wanted to open up many paths, so if he only had a few hundred soldiers in one place, Zhao Fu wouldn't have that many soldiers. As such, it was better not to develop this village at all. However, Zhao Fu would still send a few people to manage this village and bring the new people back to Qin village. Right now, these white-grade city creation stones weren't very useful, and they were mainly used to provide people. As for the other stats, Zhao Fu didn't need them at all. Chapter 129. This was the first time that he had come to a system main city in the outer regions, so Zhao Fu looked around with interest. This time, Zhao Fu had teleported here by himself and hadn't brought anyone else. If he had brought so many soldiers, he would have been blacklisted by the system main city. Battle City was a system main city that was much more crude. The buildings were all made of large rocks and didn't have much decoration. Most of the residents wore crude clothes, but they gave off a sense of wildness. Zhao Fu asked around and found out why this system main city was called Battle City. Normally, system main cities forbade private duels and provided arenas to settle grievances. Battle City's city lord had expanded the arenas by many times and encouraged duels. The way to obtain city merit points here wasn't just through quests, it could also be obtained through the arena's matches. Moreover, the city lord would host a gambling session, and the odds would be set according to the strength of both sides. Anyone could place a bet. As such, there wasn't just one arena in Battle City, but many of them. There were also spectator stands for everyone to watch. No wonder the people here were so valiant, the arenas were one of the specialties of this place. Zhao Fu felt quite interested as he walked into one of the arenas to take a look. The arena was a circular structure, and there were rows of chairs made of iron wood. At the center was a 100-meter-wide cage, within which 2 people were fighting. 09 Small Say Net. There were many people here, and it was quite raucous. Everyone was watching the 2 people fighting in the arena, and they excitedly yelled. One of the 2 people in the arena had slashed open the other person's stomach with his saber, causing that person's intestines to fall out. The scene was incredibly bloody. Seeing this bloody scene, the spectators cheered even more excitedly. By now, the other person had already killed the person who had slashed open the other person's stomach and chopped off his head, and he happily yelled to the spectators. Following this, a person who looked like a referee walked into the arena and announced his victory. Next, it was time to claim his reward. Those who had bet on this person to win could go to the side to claim their reward. There were also people there who could directly exchange the money to them. Not only would those who won the duels obtain merit points, but they would also receive a lot of coins as a reward. Due to this, many players entered the Colosseum to fight. There were many types of duels, including indigenous residents, players, outlanders, and even humans and beasts. After taking a quick look, Zhao Fu thought to himself for a while before leaving the arena. He went to the real estate department and used his status to buy 20 properties and prepare to open a restaurant. 09 Small Say Net. After spending 2 hours doing all of this, Zhao Fu went to the other 3 main cities and repeated what he had done here. He then looked at Little Valley's specialties and busied himself until night time. Only then did Zhao Fu return to Qin village. After returning to Qin village, Zhao Fu discussed with a few of his generals and decided to establish a department of commerce to manage the business side. Before, the business side was not part of the internal affairs, and most of the people that Zhao Fu had hired were players and indigenous residents. There were only a few people in charge, but now that the roads had been opened, there had to be a department of commerce. For example, managing restaurants, buying specialties, selling specialties, and buying and selling other products required a lot of people, and there was not a single department that could not be managed well. As such, Zhao Fu left this to Ba Qing. After discussing this matter, everyone else left, leaving only Zhao Fu and Gunia. Zhao Fu asked Gunia to stay because he had something to tell him. Zhao Fu wanted to nurture Gunia into a peerless swordsman, someone who could comprehend the way of the sword to the extreme. With a flick of his finger, he could insta-kill a large number of sword saints. The cruel, bloody, and cold place that Zhao Fu had seen in the Colosseum was quite suitable for Gunia. Through continuous duels and killing, he would be able to grasp the way of the sword to the extreme between life and death. If it wasn't for the fact that Zhao Fu had a special identity and had many things to take care of, he would have liked to go there to train himself. That sort of cruel place could allow people to quickly grow. Zhao Fu told Gunia about what he had seen today, and he wanted to see what Gunia thought about it. After hearing Zhao Fu's words, Gunia didn't think for too long before cupping his hands and saying, "Your Majesty, I feel that place is quite suitable for training the way of the sword, and I'm willing to go." When he heard this, Zhao Fu once again warned him, "It's incredibly dangerous there, and you'll either die or survive. You need to be mentally prepared." Gunia earnestly nodded, indicating that he understood. Seeing this, Zhao Fu took out an exquisite silver-grade sword from his king's ring and handed it to Gunia as he said, "I'll give this sword to you. I'll prepare some high-grade skills for you later." When he heard Zhao Fu's words, Gunia felt quite surprised and said, "Thank you, Your Majesty, for your reward. However, this subordinate would like to personally choose a sword. Moreover, Your Majesty doesn't need to prepare too many high-grade skills for me. Just a few basic ones will be fine." When he heard Gunia's words, Zhao Fu felt quite surprised, but he could understand. In order to pursue the essence of the way of the sword, one couldn't be too affected by external factors. Zhao Fu agreed to Gunia's request, and he brought Gunia to Qin's armory. Not only were there all sorts of weapons from the region of bones, but there were also all sorts of equipment made from bronze concentrate, as well as equipment that had been brought back by the army. When Gunia arrived at the armory and saw the countless weapons in front of him, he lightly breathed out and closed his eyes as he walked past the weapons. Even after a while, Gunia still didn't stop. Seeing this, Zhao Fu frowned and thought to himself, "Don't tell me that there isn't a single one of these weapons that Gunia likes?" Gunia continued to walk, and just as he was about to reach the end, he suddenly opened his eyes. He stretched out his hand and picked up a sword that was slightly blood-stained and seemed to have not been cleaned. After picking up the sword, Gunia lightly stroked the blade with his fingers, feeling the coldness coming from the blade, and he smiled in satisfaction. This smile surprised Zhao Fu. After all, Gunia had always been like a block of ice, and his expression was always cold. This was the first time Zhao Fu had seen him smile, so he was quite surprised. After choosing the sword, Gunia returned to Zhao Fu's side and respectfully bowed as he said, "Your Majesty, I've made my choice." When he heard this, Zhao Fu looked at Gunia's sword curiously. He had thought that Gunia had chosen a good sword, but it was only a white-grade sword. He didn't know when he had obtained it, but there was nothing special about it. Chapter 130. A system main city's city lord had been heavily injured? Zhao Fu felt quite shocked when he heard about this. Just what had happened? A system main city's city lord was an unimaginably powerful existence. Zhao Fu felt quite shocked when he heard this news. Their cultivations were definitely at least stage 4, and it went without saying how powerful they were. However, something shocking had definitely happened for them to be heavily injured, making it so that they were unable to resist. However, Zhao Fu had been in the Heaven Awakened world for the past few days, and nothing shocking had happened. Wait, suddenly, Zhao Fu looked through the information he had received and found out that it was him who had caused the city lord to be heavily injured. This caused Zhao Fu to feel quite startled, but after thinking about it, he realized that it was definitely him who had caused the city lord to be heavily injured. Now that the city lord had been heavily injured, the entire system main city had entered a special period of time. The guards had been greatly strengthened, and patrols had become more frequent in order to prevent anything unexpected from happening. The atmosphere within the system main city was quite tense, as the city lord had been heavily injured. Zhao Fu went to Qin Nan's place and asked about this. His expression was quite serious as he said with a trace of fear, "I don't know what happened either. I don't know what the city lord was trying to do, but an unimaginably terrifying power descended and pressed the city lord to the ground. Our incredibly powerful city lord was unable to retaliate at all." At that moment, Zhao Fu asked out of curiosity, "Big Brother Qin, do you have any other information about the city lord being injured?" Hearing this, Qin Nan looked around and said seriously in a small voice, "This matter has already been classified as taboo, so it's best that you don't ask too much about it. Otherwise, you'll bring disaster upon yourself. That sort of thing isn't something that minor figures like us can pay attention to." Right now, Qin Nan had no idea that the person who had caused the city lord to be heavily injured was right next to him. Zhao Fu thought that this matter might have something to do with him, but he acted as if he understood and did not ask about things that only major figures would know. Zhao Fu said goodbye to Qin Nan and found 6 basic sword techniques for Gunia. Zhao Fu then returned to Qin Town and gave the 6 basic sword techniques to Gunia. Following this, Zhao Fu had nothing else to do, so he went to sleep and cultivate. Now, Zhao Fu's cultivation had reached stage 0 to 8, and he was just a bit away from breaking through to stage 0 to 9. Early in the morning, the sun slowly rose from the east, heralding the arrival of another day. Zhao Fu woke up from his cultivation and ate a simple breakfast before taking Gunia to Battle City. After arriving at Battle City, Zhao Fu and Gunia entered an arena. The arena hadn't opened yet, and there weren't any matches yet, so it was quite deserted. Then, Zhao Fu came in front of a burly man and asked, "Excuse me, do I register as an arena warrior with you?" Zhao Fu had already asked around. After registering as an arena warrior, one would receive a basic wooden medallion. Of course, this wooden medallion wasn't very useful, but it could be upgraded. The more one won in the arena, the wooden medallion would become an iron medallion, bronze medallion, silver medallion, gold medallion, and so on. With these medallions, one would receive many benefits. For example, with an iron medallion, one could buy a house in a residential district. With a bronze medallion, one would receive a discount in all of Battle City's shops. With a gold medallion, it was even better than having a baron's status. At the same time, one would receive a large amount of merit points, which were usually many times more than completing a quest. There were many good things that could be exchanged for, such as gold-grade equipment, gold-grade city creation stones, high-grade medicinal pills, and even government positions. At that moment, the burly man had his legs crossed, and because he had woken up so early, he yawned. He raised his head and saw 2 mysterious black-cloaked people in front of him. He said, "Yes. You only need to pay 5 silver coins to register." When he heard this, Zhao Fu took out a pouch of 50 gold coins and handed it over, saying, "I want to register one, and I'll treat you to some wine. I hope you'll take care of me in the future." The burly man took the pouch of money and looked at it, and he immediately grinned. 50 gold coins was quite a bit of money to him, so he said, "That's no problem at all. "Brother, if you need anything in the future, just come and find me." Money could indeed bring people closer, and now, they were calling each other brother again. Zhao Fu smiled and said, "Many thanks." At that moment, the burly man took out a pen and paper and started to record something as he said, "Don't worry, I'll definitely help you find some pushovers in the future." When he heard this, Zhao Fu shook his head and said, "It's not me who wants to register, it's the person behind me." Following this, Zhao Fu called Gunia over. When the burly man saw Gunia walk over, he felt quite surprised from the faint cultivation ripples coming from his body. He immediately smiled and said, "Brother, it can't be, right? It seems like he's only cultivated for a few days, and this isn't a place for people like him. With his current strength, he's basically sending himself to his death. Anyone can easily kill him." When he heard this, Zhao Fu couldn't help but laugh. He knew Gunia's potential and his true strength, so he said, "That's right, it's him." The burly man looked at Gunia and once again asked, "Are you sure? This isn't a fun place." "Brother, I see that you're quite skilled, so why don't you come?" The burly man didn't believe that Gunia would be able to survive here at all, and it was as if he could already see Gunia dying. He turned to look at Zhao Fu and saw that Zhao Fu seemed quite skilled, so he wanted to pull Zhao Fu in. Of course, Zhao Fu refused and said, "I'm not suited for this place. Don't worry, I believe that he has the strength to survive." When he heard Zhao Fu's words, the burly man once again looked at Gunia. Since Zhao Fu was so insistent, there was nothing he could do. He could only write it down and ask, "Do you want your real name or a pseudonym?" In the arena, some people used their real names, while others didn't want to reveal their real names, so they could use pseudonyms. Normally, they would use pseudonyms like Hungry Wolf or Ferocious Tiger. Zhao Fu looked at Gunia and saw what pseudonym he would use. After all, Gunia definitely wouldn't use his real name. "Sword training," Gunia said coldly. He had only come here to practice his swordsmanship. When he heard this, the burly man nodded and wrote it down before handing Gunia a wooden plaque with the words "Sword Training" written on it. The burly man then took out a name list and looked at it with a frown as he said to Zhao Fu, "Brother, it's too difficult to find anyone below stage 0 to 1, and there aren't any opponents." Zhao Fu lightly smiled and said, "Just find anyone at stage 0 to 3 or above." What? Chapter 131. Bro. Do you have some enmity with this person? If you want to kill him, just do it, there's no need to make things so complicated. The big man didn't even need to think about it. After all, someone who had only cultivated for a few days facing someone with stage 0 to 3 cultivation would definitely die, so he didn't believe that Gunia could survive. As such, when he heard Zhao Fu say that he would help Gunia find someone with stage 0 to 3 cultivation, he was incredibly shocked. After all, this was equivalent to killing someone. Zhao Fu smiled and didn't reply. Instead, he looked at Gunia and asked, "Are you confident?" Gunia lowered his head and cupped his hands as he replied resolutely, "Yes, young lord." Because it was inconvenient to call Zhao Fu Your Majesty outside, Zhao Fu had everyone call him young lord. This was quite common, and almost everyone in the village called him that, so it didn't attract too much attention. When he heard this, Zhao Fu turned to the big man and said, "Find someone with stage 0 to 3 cultivation or above." Seeing that Zhao Fu was so insistent, the big man had no choice but to look at the list and say, "There's a match soon, and the opponent is someone at the peak of stage 0 to 3. He's called Evil Tyrant." "Bro, are you sure?" "If you're sure, I'll make the arrangements. Don't blame me if anything happens." The big man continuously reminded Zhao Fu. After all, he had received a lot of money from Zhao Fu, which was why he was so polite. Normally, he wouldn't be like this, as his life and death had nothing to do with him. When Zhao Fu heard the big man's words, he understood and nodded. He and Gunia went to a place that had been specially prepared for the duel and waited. Time gradually passed, and more people came to the arena. When the duel was about to start, the arena was filled with people just like before. At that moment, a person walked up to a high platform in the arena and shouted, "Good morning, everyone. I am the host of the Lone Wolf Arena, and I would like to introduce the two duels to everyone. One of them is a rather famous evil tyrant in our arena. He has a cultivation at the peak of stage 0 to 3, and I'm sure that everyone is familiar with him. Last time, he used his axe to split a person with a cultivation of around stage 0 to 4 in half." After the host finished speaking, a fierce-looking man carrying a large axe walked out from the side. When he walked out, countless spectators excitedly shouted his name. It seemed that this tyrant was quite famous. Hearing these excited shouts, a trace of a smile appeared on Tyrant's face. He quite enjoyed the feeling of being the center of attention, and he simply waved his hand as a response. Then, he walked over to the host. At that moment, the host once again shouted, "Next, I'll introduce Evil Tyrant's opponent. He's someone who has only cultivated for a few days and hasn't even reached stage 1-1, but he has already joined the arena to practice his sword." Immediately after, Gunia, who was wearing a black cloak, walked out from the side. However, when Gunia walked out, the crowd booed. Many people in the audience cursed him. "Are you kidding me? We're here to watch a fight, not to watch a massacre. Letting a person who has only cultivated for a few days go up? Yeah, that's not interesting at all. Isn't that the same as throwing your life away? There's no excitement at all. Let's end this quickly and start the next round." Hearing the cheers from the crowd, the host felt quite awkward. However, Gunia's expression did not change at all, and he walked over to the host's side. Following this, the host started to introduce the odds. The odds for betting on Evil Tyrant to win were less than 1%, while the odds for betting on Gunia were 30%. It was evident that no one believed that Gunia would win. Everyone felt that Evil Tyrant would definitely win, so after the host finished his introduction, almost everyone bet on Evil Tyrant to win. After all, this was a free win. Seeing this, Evil Tyrant felt quite pleased, and he looked at Gunia and harumphed. However, Gunia ignored this provocation and remained expressionless. Seeing this lopsided scene, Zhao Fu couldn't help but lightly laugh. Following this, Zhao Fu took out 1,000 gold coins and bet on Gunia. Zhao Fu was quite confident in Gunia. If it wasn't for the fact that the betting odds were so high that the owner could only buy 1,000 gold coins, Zhao Fu would have bet all of his money on Gunia. Following this, everyone placed their bets, while Evil Tyrant and Gunia walked into the 100-meter-wide cage from the other side. The host loudly announced, "The duel officially begins." At this moment, countless spectators yelled, "Evil Tyrant, hurry up and kill him! Let's end this quickly so we can have the next round. We'll definitely win this time, and we'll bet on you again next time." Hearing the cheers, Evil Tyrant started to laugh. He was incredibly confident in this person who had only cultivated for a few days, and he yelled, "Hey boy, kneel down and kowtow 3 times. If you kneel down and kowtow to me 3 times right now, I might take your life again later." Gunia didn't reply to Evil Tyrant's words, and he stood there with his sword outstretched. He didn't even bother taking off his cloak. A cloak could hide one's appearance and body, but it would still hinder one's movements, especially during a fight. Not only did this cause Evil Tyrant to laugh at him, but it also caused everyone else to laugh at him. This person who had only cultivated for a few days was simply seeking death. Seeing this, the host said to the big man who had been talking to Zhao Fu, "Bro, are you kidding me? You're asking a person who has only cultivated for a few days to fight Evil Tyrant." The big man looked incredibly innocent as he said, "I didn't want to, but this person said that he wanted to fight someone with stage 0 to 3 cultivation or above." "Really?" The host felt quite surprised and looked at Gunia. because of the cloak, he couldn't see anything, so he didn't believe that someone who had only cultivated for a few days would be able to defeat Evil Tyrant. Facing Evil Tyrant's mockery, Gunia still didn't react. He held his sword and stood there, not moving at all, as if he was a block of wood. Seeing that Gunia didn't react at all, Evil Tyrant felt quite displeased, and he coldly harumphed, "Since you're seeking death, don't blame me." Evil Tyrant raised his large axe and circulated his cultivation power as he rushed at Gunia. It could be said that Evil Tyrant was quite powerful, and he gave off a powerful aura like a massive beast. Soon, Evil Tyrant reached Gunia. The spectators had only come to watch a bloody slaughter, and seeing Evil Tyrant swing his axe at Gunia, they all felt that Gunia was dead for sure. As such, they all screamed in excitement. Evil Tyrant also felt that Gunia was dead for sure, and he savagely grinned as he swung his axe down. However, at that moment, Gunia slowly raised his head and looked at Evil Tyrant. His icy gaze caused Evil Tyrant's body to freeze, but in that instant, Gunia swung his sword. Shing! A clear sword hum sounded out as an arc of sword light flashed. This sword strike was incredibly fast, and most people couldn't even see it clearly. Pooh! Evil Tyrant's body froze, and a look of shock appeared on his face as a large amount of blood spurted out of his neck, forming a bloody mist. Gunia, who was holding his sword and wearing his black cloak, gave off a terrifying aura. The raucous scene instantly fell silent. Chapter 132. Bang! A muffled explosion sounded out as Evil Tyrant's body went limp and he half knelt before powerlessly collapsing to the ground. Blood slowly flowed out, and Evil Tyrant died with a look of disbelief on his face. He had lost to someone who had only cultivated for a few days. All of the spectators looked incredibly shocked. Just then, Gunia had raised his hand, and an arc of sword light had flashed out, ending everything so easily and so quickly. Is this really something that someone who has only cultivated for a few days can do? The spectators couldn't quite believe it because the feeling that Gunia gave off was that he was incredibly powerful, and it definitely wasn't something that a noob could do. However, some of the sharp-eyed spectators could tell that Gunia had indeed only cultivated for a few days. Just from the sword light that he had released, they could tell that his power came from his sword skills, which had almost reached the pinnacle. He was just a bit away from becoming a grandmaster, which was enough for him to establish his own sect. Indeed, Gunia's power came from his sword skills. Back then, Gunia had been a famous swordsman, and he had pursued the way of the sword his entire life. All of his experiences had been passed down from generation to generation. What powerful sword skills! The host, who had been in disbelief, couldn't help but exclaim. The big man's eyes widened as he looked at Gunia, feeling quite surprised. He had never thought that Gunia would be so powerful, and he had thought that Gunia was dead for sure. Hearing the host's words, he couldn't help but nod. All of the spectators' attitudes changed. Because they were all quite blind, they hadn't realized how powerful Gunia was. After a moment of silence, the spectators excitedly yelled out Gunia's name. Sword training! Sword training! Sword training! The scene was quite lively, and Zhao Fu stood by the side with his hands behind his back. His gaze fell on Gunia's body, and he gave a trace of a smile. He was not surprised that Gunia had been able to kill Evil Tyrant with a single strike, as this was completely within Zhao Fu's expectations. At that moment, the host walked up to the stage and shouted, "As everyone can see, the winner! Sword training!" What happened next caused everyone to feel quite bitter. Almost everyone had bet on Evil Tyrant, and now that Gunia had won, they had lost their bet. Everyone had lost a lot of money. On the other hand, Zhao Fu had made a massive profit. Because the payout was 30-1, Zhao Fu's 1,000 gold coins was 30,000 gold coins. Seeing the competition end so quickly, the big man and the host discussed among themselves. Following this, The big man ran to Zhao Fu's side and passionately said, "Brother, how about having your subordinates fight a few more rounds?" Hearing this, Zhao Fu thought about it and realized that he hadn't even done anything to Gunia, so he nodded and said, "Find 5 people with stage 0 to 4 cultivation or above to attack together." Hearing Zhao Fu's words, the big man felt a bit surprised, but he understood. After all, he was unable to determine Gunia's true strength. Following this, the second round began. This time, Zhao Fu's opponents were all different. Some were tall, some were short, some were ugly, and some were quite good-looking. However, they all had one thing in common, which was their ferocious gazes. It was evident that none of them were good people. Some of these 5 people had just broken through to stage 0 to 4, while others were at the peak of stage 0 to 4 and were only a step away from stage 0 to 5. When the big man had come to find them, they had been quite unwilling to accept him because they had seen Gunia's monstrous sword technique. However, after hearing that there were 5 of them, they had agreed. Now that there were 5 of them, they felt quite confident. After all, no matter how powerful Gunia's sword technique was, he was still a noob who had only started cultivating for a few days. They felt that Evil Tyrant had been too careless, and none of them thought that they would be like Evil Tyrant. Seeing that it was 5 against 1, if it was before, the spectators would have yelled out, "What do you mean by finding 5 stage 0 to 4 people to fight a noob who has just started cultivating? Are you kidding me? Or should I say, do the 5 of them still have the face to fight a rookie?" However, now, all of the spectators stared at Gunia. They wanted to see just how powerful this mysterious cloaked swordsman was, and they were filled with anticipation. Following this, the host announced the start of the battle, and the 5 people turned into 5 black blurs as they rushed at Gunia, surrounding him. Gunia continued to hold his sword as he stood there like a block of wood, not moving at all. The 5 people looked quite serious as they walked around Gunia, wanting to find any openings on his body. However, they were unable to find anything. The spectators outside also stared intently at the arena and did not make any noise. They knew what sort of battle this was. A while later, within the oppressive atmosphere, one of the people finally couldn't help but act. He raised his large saber and slashed towards Gunia from behind. At that moment, Gunia also moved. He spun and slashed out with his sword, sending out a cold sword light. The person attacking Gunia felt a chill in his heart, and his hair stood on end. Before he could do anything, his head flew into the air. Another person grasped this opportunity and started to attack Gunia, slashing towards Gunia with his sword. Gunia's body leaned to the side, dodging this person's attack. He then used the sword in his hand to slash downwards, slicing the person's abdomen all the way to his left shoulder. Blood sprayed everywhere as the person's internal organs were sliced open. A second person had fallen. At that moment, the third person attacked. He gripped the spear in his hand and stabbed out as fast as lightning, piercing through the air towards Gunia's chest. This person was the person who was almost at stage 0 to 5, and his eyes were incredibly sharp. Just as Gunia was about to kill the second person, he attacked incredibly quickly. The spectators outside couldn't help but gasp. However, just as the spear was about to hit Gunia, Gunia flipped backwards. He was unable to dodge this person's attack, and he slashed out with his sword in midair. Pooh! A sword light flashed out, and a bloody gash appeared on that person's head before he fell to the ground dead. Another person was unwilling to give up and rushed up. However, in the next second, Gunia did not even look at that person as he slashed out with his sword. Blood spurted out, and that person clutched his throat and struggled on the ground in pain before dying. Gunia's cold gaze fell on the final person. This person was a skinny young man who had just broken through to stage 0 to 4. He had come to join the arena, but he had never thought that Gunia would be so powerful. Under Gunia's cold gaze, that person felt terror in his heart, and his body started to tremble. He threw down his weapon and knelt on the ground, admitting defeat and begging for his life. Seeing this, Gunia did not continue to attack. In the blink of an eye, another battle ended. The arena fell silent, and the spectators stared wide-eyed at Gunia, who was wearing a black cloak and wielding a blood-stained sword. He gave off a cold, murderous, and mysterious aura. Chapter 133. Following this, Gunia competed a few more times, and he won every time. Most of his opponents were at or above stage 0 to 5, and anyone below stage 0 to 5 would definitely die. After these matches, Gunia's identity card became an iron card. At the same time, Gunia's extremely powerful sword techniques became known to ordinary people, and his name as the Sword Demon started to spread. Many people knew that an extremely powerful expert of the way of the sword had come to Battle City, and this was only the first day of Gunia's legend in Battle City. In the future, his deeds would definitely spread far and wide, and he would be revered by many people. After a few matches, Zhao Fu left Gunia in the arena and had him continue to practice his sword skills. Zhao Fu went to a place that he had bought before to build a restaurant. It was already being renovated and would soon be ready for business. The business model here was the same as the Westfall restaurant, where players were hired as waiters. As for chefs, Zhao Fu did not use players, as Zhao Fu had already nurtured a group of chefs. Back when he had opened the Westfall restaurant, in order to prevent chefs from being poached, Zhao Fu had already started to nurture chefs. These chefs were all residents of Qin City, and compared to player chefs, they were much more loyal to Zhao Fu. They definitely would not be like player chefs, who would sell everything for money. If a player chef was poached by someone else, Zhao Fu would be able to accept it. At worst, he would just have to find someone else. However, what Zhao Fu was most afraid of was being bribed by someone else to poison their food. If such a thing happened, the restaurant would be destroyed, and this sort of thing was quite common. In order to be safe, Zhao Fu decided to use his own chef. As for this restaurant, Zhao Fu would not use the Westfall restaurant's name. After all, the Westfall restaurant had appeared in the Forest of Horrors and the Little Valley, which would make it too eye-catching. Therefore, the name had to be changed. Not only this one, but every restaurant that was opened in the future would have a different name to deceive people. At this time, the restaurant already had a manager, who was a member of the business department. All of them had a certain level of business management knowledge, and could deal with all kinds of problems in this area. Now, the restaurant was also recruiting people. Because the treatment was quite good, many girls lined up outside, and Zhao Fu could only walk in from the side. Seeing Zhao Fu walk in, the three people who were in charge of this place hurriedly stood up and bowed respectfully. "Young master." Zhao Fu nodded and said, "Don't mind me, you guys continue, I'm just here to take a look." The three managers obeyed and continued with the interview. The surrounding girls also knew that Zhao Fu was the boss, so they all looked over curiously. Zhao Fu only came to take a few glances, and just as he was about to leave, he saw a familiar person in the crowd. It was a pretty and slim girl who was about the same age as Zhao Fu. Her name was Sun Qin, and she was Zhao Fu's classmate at university. Zhao Fu had never thought that he would meet a classmate from the past. Because the people who entered the Heaven Awakened world were randomized, even if they were from the same place in the real world, they would appear somewhere else after entering the Heaven Awakened world. Zhao Fu thought to himself that the more passages he opened in the future, the more people he would meet. Zhao Fu did not feel much about this, and Zhao Fu and Sun Qin's relationship was that of ordinary classmates. They had only exchanged a few words and had a good impression of each other. Sun Qin sensed Zhao Fu's gaze, and she looked up at the mysterious black-cloaked figure in front of her. She suddenly felt a trace of familiarity, but she was just a commoner and had never seen such a grand figure before. As far as she knew, this was the first restaurant that a player had opened in Battle City. Just the land alone cost 80 gold. 80 gold was equivalent to $8 million in the real world. Even though the value of money in the real world had greatly decreased recently, it was still $8 million. She didn't even dare to imagine that she would have so much money. Sun Qin took Zhao Fu to be the young master of a large family or a young master of a large corporation. As such, facing Zhao Fu's gaze, Sun Qin did not dare to say anything. After all, that sort of person had 100 ways to kill you. By now, Zhao Fu looked away. He remembered that Sun Qin was a university student from a rural village, and she had 4 younger siblings. She was quite poor financially, or else she would not have chosen to work in the heaven-awakened world. Zhao Fu called over the manager and whispered to him that he would accept Sun Qin. The manager respectfully nodded and looked at Sun Qin, making Sun Qin feel quite strange. After speaking, Zhao Fu left. When it came to matters like this, Zhao Fu would help if he could. After Zhao Fu left, the manager walked over to Sun Qin and slightly smiled as he said, "Congratulations! You've been hired." "What?" Sun Qin was quite shocked. She had not even gone through the interview yet, so how had she been hired so quickly? Sun Qin had thought that she would not be hired, as there were 300 or so women applying. With the pressure from the competition, Sun Qin had lost all confidence. However, she had never thought that she would be hired just like that. Sun Qin felt that this had something to do with the mysterious boss looking at her. At the same time, she wondered if she really knew such a grand figure. "Young Miss Sun, you can start working tomorrow," the manager said to Sun Qin in a friendly manner. Sun Qin quickly came back to her senses and happily nodded. Even though she did not know why, she would be able to earn a lot of money by working here. Not only would she be able to pay for her tuition, but she would also be able to support her family, so she was naturally quite happy. "Thank you. I'll be going now." Sun Qin thanked the manager before leaving the heaven-awakened world. She planned to tell her family about the good news. Over at Zhao Fu's side, Zhao Fu came to a building that was being renovated. This was the base of a merchant guild, which was established by Zhao Fu. It was called the Misty Rain Merchant Guild, and it managed all sorts of businesses. It was directly managed by Qin's business department. This sort of merchant guild would be involved in many businesses, and the profits would be quite high, so it was quite eye-catching. Zhao Fu planned to establish 4 merchant guilds, and they would appear at different times and places. This way, no one would suspect that they belonged to the same merchant guild. At the same time, Zhao Fu also wanted to establish a few factions. These factions would mostly be made up of players, and they would have many uses. However, Zhao Fu would not go into detail about them, and Zhao Fu would control everything from behind the scenes. However, Zhao Fu had not met the right person or opportunity yet, so this plan was temporarily put on hold. Chapter 134. With the experience from the first time, Zhao Fu brought very few people with him this time. There were 5 scholars who specialized in building teleportation portals and 3 ordinary soldiers. This path led to 100 bamboo, and the process of opening this path was almost the same as before. Zhao Fu used teleportation channels 20 or so times, found a cave, used a city creation stone, and established a village within it before connecting to 100 Bamboo's 4 system main cities. 100 Bamboo was a place like its name. There were a lot of bamboos here, and the green bamboo forest was like a green ocean. It was very spectacular and beautiful. At the same time, there were many types of bamboo here, and there was no lack of 100-year-old bamboos that were tens of meters tall and as thick as buckets. Bamboo had replaced ordinary wood here, so most of the buildings here were mainly made of bamboo. The style was very fresh and elegant. Zhao Fu went to the 4 system main cities and bought some property before finding a place to open a restaurant. Only after taking care of these things did Zhao Fu have time to walk around the system main cities to see if there were any specialties. Then, after a few rounds, he gained something. Zhao Fu found that the bamboo rats here were very large and tasted abnormally delicious. They were very popular, and there were many dishes in 100 Bamboo that used bamboo rats as the main ingredient. At the same time, because there was bamboo everywhere, there was no shortage of food for countless bamboo rats, so there was a lot of them. The price of bamboo rats wasn't expensive either. A bamboo rat that weighed 2 to 5 kilograms only cost 30 copper coins. After seeing the bamboo rats, Zhao Fu bought some and planned to use them to make his own dishes. As time went on and the various large factions developed, there would soon be people who would become barons and be able to buy property in the system main cities. If they also opened restaurants, Zhao Fu's restaurant's business would be greatly affected. Making use of things that others didn't have and making all kinds of exclusive dishes was an advantage. It was also the key to winning in many restaurants. After dealing with these things, Zhao Fu returned to Qin Town again. As soon as he came back, he found that Li Wen was waiting for him with a happy expression. Right now, the two teams were exploring the underground passageway. Because everything below was unknown, the danger level was quite high, so Zhao Fu told Li Wen and the others to be careful. Even though they had slowed down, Zhao Fu felt that their safety was the most important. Li Wen spent most of his time in the underground passageway, and it was very rare to see him. Seeing that Li Wen was waiting for him, Zhao Fu asked curiously, "Li Wen, why are you looking for me?" Hearing Zhao Fu's words, Li Wen bowed and smiled as he took out 10 or so orbs of light from his spatial ring. These orbs of light glowed with a faint white light, and within them seemed to be images of mighty soldiers. That's right, they were all soldier souls. Seeing so many soldier souls, Zhao Fu felt quite delighted. Adding on the soldier souls he had obtained from before, he now had 103 soldier souls, enough to fuse a general armament. Zhao Fu had coveted a general armament for a long time, and now that he could finally have one, he was quite happy. "Master, I want it." At that moment, the Sky Demon's voice sounded out in Zhao Fu's mind. With so many pure soul items, they would be incredibly beneficial to her. However, Zhao Fu immediately refused because there were very few soldier souls, and Zhao Fu couldn't casually let the Sky Demon devour them. After all, Zhao Fu wanted to collect 24 general armaments and obtain a king armament. The king's ring that Zhao Fu had been fused with an ancient king armament shard, and just a shard was already incredibly useful. Just how powerful would a complete king armament be? After hearing Zhao Fu's refusal, the Sky Demon became quite unhappy, and it shrunk back into its sword and did not say anything else. Following this, Zhao Fu took out soldier souls and started to fuse them together. At the start, Zhao Fu fused 2 soldier souls together. After fusing them together, the outer appearance didn't change much, but the illusory soldiers seemed to become more corporeal, and the power they gave off became more powerful. Following this, Zhao Fu continued to fuse them, and he fused a 3rd, 4th, and 5th soldier souls. As Zhao Fu fused more and more soldier souls, the illusory soldiers within the orb of light became more corporeal and gave off extraordinary power. Only now did Zhao Fu fuse the 10 soldier souls together. Zhao Fu looked at the soldier souls' stats and found that they had changed. Divine Soldier Soul. An item created by fusing many soldier souls. It can be used to strengthen equipment, summon, or fuse into a formation or structure to act as a guardian spirit. Divine soldier souls were much more useful than soldier souls, and they could even be used for summoning. Zhao Fu guessed that summoning was similar to soul crystals, such as the soul crystal that Zhao Fu had used to summon the Ironback Demon Bear. However, this divine soldier soul didn't seem to have a summoning limit, so it could be used many times. After looking at the divine soldier soul's stats, Zhao Fu wanted to continue fusing them, but he received a system announcement that he couldn't fuse them anymore. What does this mean? Didn't it say that after gathering 100 soldier souls, one could fuse them into a general armament? Why can't I fuse them anymore? Zhao Fu felt quite confused, and after looking at the system announcement, he realized what was going on. It turned out that it was impossible to directly fuse 100 soldier souls together. Instead, the 100 soldier souls had to be fused into 10 divine soldier souls before they could be fused together. Moreover, one had to have a general profession before they could fuse together. Seeing this, Zhao Fu ordered people to call Bai Qi over. Many people heard that he was going to fuse a general armament, and they all ran over out of curiosity. After all, they had obtained this general armament not long after discovering the underground passageway. Back then, they had been quite weak, but they still remembered how powerful the skeleton captain was. Back then, everyone knew that the soldier souls it had dropped weren't ordinary items, and they had been looking forward to fusing them into a general armament. Now they had finally succeeded. Your Majesty! After a while, Bai Qi hurried over and cupped his hands as he called out to Zhao Fu. Hearing this, Zhao Fu turned to look at Bai Qi and smiled. He handed the 10 divine soldier souls to him so that he could fuse them. Bai Qi knew why Zhao Fu had come to find him, so he wasn't too surprised. At the same time, he was quite curious about what a general armament was. Following the system announcement, Bai Qi started to fuse them. The 10 soldier souls gave off a large amount of white light and floated into the sky from Bai Qi's hands, forming a circle with him at the center. The white light that the soldier souls gave off became bigger and bigger until they formed 10 gigantic orbs of light. Boom! An explosion sounded out as the 10 giant balls of light unleashed a powerful force, causing the entire sky to tremble. In that instant, clouds swirled around Bai Qi, causing a massive gale to sweep out. At that moment, the 10 soldier souls within the 10 orbs of light started to melt like ice before turning into traces of violet qi. The 10 orbs of light seemed to resonate with each other. Boom! Another massive explosion sounded out as a massive violet star giving off a noble starlight and a boundless aura broke through the restrictions of the day and descended above Qin. Chapter 135. How could someone have a general star return so quickly? Countless ability users and espers looked up at the violet star in the sky, feeling incredibly shocked and speechless. A general star was a type of fate that resonated with the stars in the sky. Anyone with a general star would definitely become a great general in the future, and they were extremely powerful. They were skilled in both literature and martial arts, and they could govern and bring peace to a country. Their role was to assist a ruler, and they were people who gathered great fate. In ancient times, geomancers often said that having a general star in one's fate meant that one's future achievements would be extraordinary, and they would definitely become a powerful figure. For example, Han Xian, Zhuge Liang, Qin Qiong. All of these people were people who would go down in history, and all of them had made great contributions to a ruler. From this, one could see how important they were. Now that the heaven-awakened world had appeared, many historical great generals had been revived. Their general stars had been sealed, and they would slowly be unsealed as time passed. This was called General Star Return by ability users and espers. Of course, the appearance of this violet star in the sky was also related to general stars in one's fate. General stars in one's fate were different from general stars in one's fate. It meant that anyone with a general star in their fate would have this violet star appear when they were born. General stars in one's fate referred to those who were born as great generals, while general stars in one's fate referred to those whose general stars had been sealed. Currently, no one in the heaven-awakened world who had general stars in their fate had discovered this, but that did not mean that it was impossible. After all, general stars in one's fate were a product of massive amounts of fate rising and falling. For example, during chaotic times, many people with general stars in their fate would descend, and when a country was unstable, there would also be general stars in their fate. They would only appear when fate rose and fell, and the heaven-awakened world was currently in a chaotic era, so there would most likely be many people with general stars in their fate. Now, these ability users and espers believed that this violet star was a general star return rather than a general star in one's fate. This was because the general star's changes had not stopped, and it gave off a heavy sense of history. Soon, everyone turned to look at Qin Town. At the center of the massive storm, under the violet star, Bai Qi received a system announcement and slowly drew the star-slashing sword at his waist, pointing it towards the sky. Arg! Bai Qi roared as a massive aura exploded out from his body, and a large amount of blood-red aura rushed out from his body. By now, the storm was many times stronger than before, and sand and pebbles were sent flying everywhere. The countless people who had come to watch the show did their best to defend against the berserk wind, but they were still blown far away. Zhao Fu also released a black dragon inscription barrier, allowing him to stand firmly within the berserk wind. Boom! A rumbling sound rang out as several blood-red arcs of lightning flashed around Bai Qi. Then, a blood-red pillar of light burst out of Bai Qi's body and shot straight towards the huge purple star. The blood-red pillar of light smashed into a violet star. The violet star, which had been giving off a noble light, was gradually dyed blood-red, and a cold and murderous aura spread out from it. Countless people with special abilities saw the purple star turn blood-red, and their pupils constricted as they exclaimed, 7 kills. 7 kills was one of the 13 general stars, and it was responsible for killing. It was a general star with a heavy murderous nature. At the same time, when the 7 kills, Voracious Wolf, and Army Destroyer stars met, they would form the Slaughter Destroyer Wolf formation. Once these 3 stars gathered, the world would be irreversible. The 7 kills star gave off a faint blood-red light as it hung in the blue sky, creating a strange scene. At this moment, the blood-red pillar of light around Bai Qi's body gradually weakened, becoming smaller and smaller, and it was about to disappear. Boom! The 7 murder star in the sky shot down a blood-red pillar of starlight that landed on Bai Qi's body. The air instantly exploded, turning into a shockwave that spread out in all directions. This massive shockwave caused the ground to crack, and Zhao Fu, who was beside him, took a step back. Luckily, the storm had already stopped. Under the blood-red pillar of starlight, Bai Qi still pointed his sword towards the heavens, but the starlight passed through his body, causing his body to change. His eyes revealed a cold blood-red light, and his long black hair was disheveled because of the storm. He stood there, giving off a murderous aura, making him look incredibly terrifying. At this moment, the 10 massive orbs of light in the sky slowly gathered towards Bai Qi and fused into the sword that he was holding up. After the originally silver-white star-slashing sword fused with the sphere of light, it first turned into a noble purple sword. Then, the purple slowly turned into a blood-colored sword. Just like the blood-colored starlight, it emitted an ice-cold killing intent. The sword's body flowed with light, and the words 7 kills were engraved on it. Finally, the 7 kills sword was completely formed. Following this, the blood-red pillar of starlight became smaller and smaller before disappearing, and the blood-red star in the sky also slowly disappeared. All of the abnormal signs disappeared, leaving behind a mess on the ground. Bai Qi stood at the center, and a corporeal killing intent surrounded him, making it so that no creature dared to approach him. By now, Bai Qi had returned to the Bai Qi from history. Killing 1 is a sin, but killing 10,000 is a hero. Killing 9 million is a hero among heroes. In history, Bai Qi was the master of the 7 kills fate, and he had fought on the battlefield for 37 years. He had conquered 70 or so cities and killed over 1 million enemies, and he had never lost a battle. However, those who had a good beginning might not have a good ending, and he had been ordered to die in the end. Thinking about how he had been ordered to die, Zhao Fu could not help but sigh. This was indeed the fault of a ruler, not a subject. Zhao Fu would never do such a thing again in the future. Seeing the blood-red star slowly disappear, Countless espers and ability users looked away and resisted the urge to try divining. After all, the backlash from the general star fate was only slightly smaller than divining the son of heaven's fate. If he had a son of heaven's fate with a massive amount of fate, the backlash would have been 3 times greater. Now, there was no one with a general star fate, so the person who had unsealed the 7 kills star must have been someone else. Who is this person, and who is his subordinate? He was the first to unseal the 7 kills star, so his name will definitely shake the world in the future. Suddenly, the espers and ability users realized that the 7 kills star had appeared in a direction that no one wanted to mention, which was the north. Thinking of something, everyone looked shocked and couldn't help but say, "It can't be like that, right? This 7 kills star belongs to Qin?" Chapter 136. Many pretentious espers and espers thought about how Qin had received all of China's fate, and now that he had the 7 murders sect, he would be able to form a massive faction in the future. As such, many people started to think about joining him. Some espers and espers who already had their own legatees reported this matter to their legatees, and Qin's harsh words once again sounded out in their ears. The fact that China's fate had been tilted towards Qin town had pushed Qin's name to the top, causing everyone to feel quite dissatisfied. Right now, the last thing they wanted to hear was news about Qin, but now they heard news about Qin. Luckily, it was possible that the 7 murders sect didn't belong to Qin town, so this matter didn't cause too much of a ruckus. Elsewhere, He Xianru stood outside the building and looked towards the Qin town. A beautiful smile appeared on her face as she muttered to herself, "Your Majesty! You didn't let me down. Beautiful teacher, what are you doing? The kitchen is looking for you." Hua Qing asked curiously when he saw He Xianru standing there. He Xianru turned to look at Hua Qing and shook her head as she said, "I'll leave the kitchen to you for now. I'm going to leave the heaven-awakened world for a while." Hua Qing nodded and watched He Xianru's body slowly disappear before returning to the kitchen. Now that he was in charge of the kitchen, he felt quite delighted and wanted to see how his cooking skills were progressing. Over at Zhang Heng, who had been riding on his donkey towards Battle City, looked at the disappearing 7 murders star with a serious expression and said, "In the future, Great Qin will definitely become one of the most powerful countries." In Demon Tree City, there were 2 people from the Mahist family. After seeing the 7 murders star disappear, the person called Uncle Lin couldn't help but sigh as he said, "With such dense killing intent, this person will definitely be stained with blood in the future." The young man next to him also nodded and said, "It gives me a very uncomfortable feeling." Uncle Lin nodded and explained, "The Mahist family's principles are love with impartiality, non-aggression, frugality, clear-mindedness, and the will of the heavens. This person has killed too much and is a general star, which is why your Heaven's Works Inc. I feel so uncomfortable." The young man understood and didn't say anything else. He lowered his head and played with the puppet in his hand. Finally, back at Qin town, Bai Qi returned to normal. Looking at the mess, he cupped his hands and said to Zhao Fu apologetically, "Your Highness." "Sorry." Hearing Bai Qi's words, Zhao Fu lightly laughed. How could he blame Bai Qi? He shook his head, indicating that Bai Qi did not mind. In actuality, Zhao Fu had never thought that general stars would be unlocked when fusing a general armament, and he did not know much about general stars. Zhao Fu asked curiously, "Bai Qi, how does it feel to unseal your general star?" Hearing this, Bai Qi thought for a moment before replying, "Your Majesty, my stats haven't changed much, but I feel much better than before." Facing this vague reply, Zhao Fu thought about it and decided that unsealing the general star was most likely some sort of change in fate, so he did not ask any further. Zhao Fu then looked at the blood-red sword in Zhao Fu's hand. He was quite interested in this sword because it had fused with a general armament and seemed to have fused with a general star. This sword's effects would most likely be quite extraordinary, and Zhao Fu took it and looked at it. 7 Murders Sword, Grade. Epic, Stats. Strength plus 25, Intelligence plus 15, Constitution plus 15, Agility plus 15. Description: a half-legendary grade weapon that has been corroded by time. After fusing with a general armament and the 7 Murders General Star's power, it has become a general armament, the 7 Murders Sword. This sword has 6 special effects. Special Effect 1. General's Power. Commander's soldiers receive this effect, all stats plus 5. This effect can be stacked up to 4 times, and the effect will decrease with each stack. When Zhao Fu saw the first effect, he felt incredibly delighted. After all, plus 5 to all stats was equivalent to 20 stat points, which was the same as a piece of low-grade gold-grade equipment. Now, all of the soldiers under Bai Qi's command had received a bonus from a piece of gold-grade equipment. This was enough to make anyone feel incredibly happy. What was even more surprising was that this effect could be stacked up to 4 times. However, the effect would decrease with each stack. If Zhao Fu had many general armaments, he would have to combine them to use them. This meant that when a few general professions with general armaments were gathered together, they would receive all stats. The first general armament would receive all stats plus 5, the second general armament would receive all stats plus 4, the third general armament would receive all stats plus 3, and the fourth general armament would receive all stats plus 2. 4 general armaments gave a total of 56 stat points, which was simply too monstrous. It was almost the same as a very good piece of legendary grade equipment. However, the key thing was whether or not he would be able to obtain so many general armament. Special Effect 2. General's Courage. This effect greatly increases morale and makes soldiers' minds more resolute. Resistance to illusions and formations plus 200%, and the effect can be stacked up to 6 times. This effect was quite good. In the future, when the battles increased, they would definitely meet enemies who were proficient in illusions and formations, and this effect would be quite effective. The 200% meant that the effects of illusions would be doubled, and the effect could be stacked up to 6 times, which meant that the effects would be reduced by 12 times. Special Effect 3. General's Light. This effect increases soldiers' recovery speed and has a certain healing effect. The effect can be stacked up to 12 times. Special Effect 4. General's Soldiers. This effect increases the limit of one's unique military by 200% and increases the first 3 special effects of unique military by 50%. This effect cannot be stacked, and it can only be stacked on one special effect. As for the 4th effect, there was no need to talk about the upper limit of unique military. The unique military's special effects would be increased by 50%, which meant that the first 3 special effects of unique military would be increased by 50%. However, there was no way to stack the effects, which meant that one's equipment would only receive an increase of 50%. For example, the first effect would give all stats plus 5, and the 4th effect would give all stats plus 7, but it would not be possible to stack the effects by 50%. Special Effect 5. The Soldier Aura Formation. Each soldier can give off their own soldier aura, and all of their soldier auras can be fused to form powerful weapons or beasts. Only now did Zhao Fu realize that the 5th effect was the most powerful, as it could gather all of a soldier's strength. For example, if 1,000 soldiers' soldier auras were gathered, they could form a ferocious tiger. Because this tiger had the strength of 1,000 soldiers, it definitely wouldn't be weak, and it would definitely be a killing machine on the battlefield. Chapter 137. Slaughterer. This effect causes soldiers to enter a berserk state of slaughter. Soldiers in this state have their strength increased by 5 to 8 times, and they receive 7 Murders Power. Because 7 Murders Power belongs to one of the 13 General Stars, the 7 Murders Star, They receive -30% magic damage and -80% spirit damage. They have no effect on illusions and are greatly immune to divine art. However, the downside is that all soldiers in this state will lose their rationality. This was the sixth effect of the Seven Murders Sword, which was the effect of the Seven Murders Star's influence. This effect was incredibly powerful, and all strength could be increased by 5 to 8 times, and the user could also obtain the Seven Murders power. Furthermore, there were many types of immunity effects, and soldiers in this state could completely transform into humanoid weapons. It was absolutely terrifying. However, the flaw was also extremely obvious. They would lose all rationality, which meant that the soldiers would not be easily controlled. Apart from those who had the Seven Murders Sword and the fate of the Seven Murders General, it was very difficult for anyone to suppress these soldiers who had fallen into a state of slaughter. The sixth effect of the Slaughterer needed to be used carefully, and it could only be used at critical moments. After looking at the Seven Murders Sword's stats, Zhao Fu returned it to Bai Qi. Now that Bai Qi had obtained the Seven Murders Sword, Zhao Fu felt even more anticipation towards the king armament that he would be able to fuse with 24 general armaments. With the Seven Murders Sword and the Sky Demon Sword, Qin Village now had 2 epic-grade items, which was quite a good achievement. Apart from Zhao Fu, no other player faction had an epic-grade item. Following this, everything went according to plan. The exploration team was given to Bai Qi to lead, while Wang Jian stayed at the rear. Li Si took care of internal affairs, and Ba Qing took care of the business. Now that there were people in charge of everything, Zhao Fu was able to relax. It seemed that there was nothing else that Zhao Fu needed to do. He was only needed to buy property in other system main cities, and everything else was taken care of by people in charge. Moreover, 2 roads had been opened, and void beasts only spawned once every 3 days, so Zhao Fu didn't have much to do for now. Since he had nothing to do, Zhao Fu walked around Qin Town a few times. He looked at the thriving development of Qin Town and went to Rising Qin Academy to have a look. Zhao Fu was also quite surprised. He saw that Asani had changed into a scholar's robe, and her aura was no longer as fantastical as before. She now had a trace of Chinese elegance, and she seemed like a teacher when she lectured. Secondly, even though the Rising Qin Academy's conditions were tough, these students seemed to be very serious. This was how people were. The harder it was to obtain something, the more they treasured it. Only with great pressure would they be motivated. When the country was in ruins, some people would carry great ideals and study for the sake of the country's rise. However, when material resources were abundant, reading good books was only for the sake of a better future. After looking around for a while, Zhao Fu decided that there was nothing else to do, so he returned to his room and sat cross-legged on his bed. He consumed a few little spirit pills and spent the rest of his time on raising his cultivation. Time gradually passed, and soon it was the next day. Zhao Fu let out a breath and slowly opened his eyes. By now, his cultivation had reached stage 0 to 9, and he was only a stage away from breaking through to stage 1. Zhao Fu didn't know what would happen to players when they broke through to stage 1. Thinking about how he hadn't left the Heaven Awakened world in a long time, Zhao Fu returned to the real world. Just as his consciousness returned to his body, he felt a familiar sense of hunger. Staying in the Heaven Awakened world for too long was a bad thing. If he didn't leave, he might actually starve to death. Zhao Fu asked the bodyguard outside to bring some food back, and he heard that Wu Qingyang had come looking for him. Zhao Fu felt quite curious as to why she had come looking for him. However, after hearing from the bodyguard that she had left after seeing Zhao Fu in the Heaven Awakened world, she felt that it wasn't important, so Zhao Fu didn't mind. As he carried the food, he opened the Heaven Awakened world for him, and what he saw caused his eyes to widen. His hands trembled, and he almost dropped his bowl and chopsticks. Now, Zhao Fu finally realized how big of a commotion he had caused. The hottest topic on the Heaven Awaken World Forum, as well as the #1 post, was about Great Qin. What's going on? Zhao Fu had never thought that Qin would receive so much attention. Before, Zhao Fu had always kept a low profile, unlike the other legatees who were extremely high profile. No matter what they did, they would receive a lot of attention, and they would often be the type that would make the headlines. The benefit of being high profile was that they had more influence on ordinary people, which was an advertisement. The more famous they were, the more support they would receive. Even though the Heaven Awaken world could increase the population, the ordinary people in the real world were also a massive resource. Because they were high profile, they had the support of their families. After China's government had been exposed, they had also become more high profile. Things related to them would often make the headlines, such as displaying the spirit of China's military and attacking a certain country. Zhao Fu was simply too weak in the real world, so he could only keep a low profile. At the same time, he was afraid that others would find out about him. As such, even though Qin was mysterious, there was not much news about him, so he did not receive much attention. However, he had now made the headlines, and his popularity had not decreased at all. Zhao Fu guessed that it was because of the Chinese race's fate. Even though he had been prepared for this, when Zhao Fu clicked on it, he was still shocked. Countless prime ministers, presidents, and prime ministers wanted to meet him. It wasn't just foreign countries either. Even China's most powerful person praised him for being young and promising, and they wanted to discuss important matters of the country with him. Xia, Shang, Zhou, Han, all of the legatees of the dynasties have said that Qin, don't be too arrogant and domineering. Don't be too arrogant and domineering, we're not any weaker than you. Global voting. Out of the top 10 mysteries in the Heaven Awaken world, who is Qin's legatee? Su Yuyan, a super popular celebrity, has expressed that she likes domineering men who conquer the world. She even thinks of this mysterious Qin's legatee as her boyfriend, breaking countless fans' hearts. Recently, countless foreign media outlets have been fighting to report news about Qin, which has become the headlines of the world. This has greatly increased China's influence and helped China's culture to communicate with the rest of the world. Thailand's super popular internet celebrity, the #1 bewitching man in history, has boldly expressed his love for Qin's legatee. He is willing to devote himself to him, and they have agreed to meet at a certain place. The #1 bewitching man is already waiting, and he has started a 24-hour live broadcast for everyone to witness this romantic moment. The bewitching man also said, Chapter 138. There were many messages, and Zhao Fu did not read them all. Instead, he chose a few of the more important ones. One of the messages was that the leaders of the Ying family's major branches had personally come out and expressed their willingness to hand over all of their factions and resources to Zhao Fu. If Zhao Fu returned to the Ying family, he would immediately become the leader of the entire Ying family. They believed that Zhao Fu would be able to lead Qin back to its former glory, and they swore that if they had any thoughts of suppressing the Ying family, they would die without a grave. These people had publicly expressed their stance and made such a heavy oath, showing their sincerity. However, Zhao Fu did not plan on revealing himself. Would you hand your life over to a promise that has no binding power? Even though the Ying family's factions and resources are quite tempting, you can see the sincerity of the Ying family's leaders. However, right now, Zhao Fu was still too weak and couldn't do much. He didn't fantasize about how merciful his enemies were, and before he had the power to protect himself, he would not reveal his identity. The second message was that the legatees of the small kingdoms in the northern part of the Midland continent were the state of Wei from the Warring States period, the state of Qi from the 16 Kingdoms period, the state of later Zhou from the 5 Dynasties and 10 Kingdoms period, and Great Shun, which was established by Li Zicheng. These 4 legatees were worried that Qin would be in the north, So they gathered all of the legatees in the north to form a Qin resistance alliance. Because of China's long history, there were many small kingdoms, and because they belonged to different eras, some kingdoms' names were repeated. This second message caused Zhao Fu to frown. It's too early. Right now, all of the factions are only at the level of villages or towns, and most of them are unable to leave their regions. The system factions are the main power in the Heaven Awaken world, and yet they're forming a Qin resistance alliance at such a time? Even though Qin has received China's fate and is one of China's 5 great legatees, he's only a threat on the surface and isn't actually a threat. Could Qin just run over and destroy them all? That's impossible, and yet they're already calling for people to resist Qin. Zhao Fu had never expected this. However, only 6 people had joined the Qin Resistance Alliance, and the other factions in the north did not say anything. After all, this would be a public declaration of war against Qin. Everyone else understood that Great Qin was the greatest danger, and this meant that it was incredibly powerful. However, daring to declare war against it at a time like this was incredibly unwise, as development was the most important thing right now. Since you know how powerful it is, you still dare to do such a provocative thing. You're just like a child, publicly provoking an adult. Aren't you just asking for a beating? Even though it seemed that the Qin Resistance Alliance wouldn't be able to do anything to Qin, Zhao Fu felt that Qin. Zhao could not help but to feel that. Zhao Fu Zhao Hu Qin, not Fu he Zhao Hu Qin and not. The only possibility was that the 100 Schools of Thought's school of vertical and horizontal was the school of vertical and horizontal. After all, this was an alliance. Zhao Fu was quite angry about the vertical and horizontal schools' actions. Since they had made their stand against Qin so quickly and wanted to use Qin as a chess piece, Zhao Fu would not show them any mercy. Back then, Qin allied with 6 other states and forced the state of Qin to abandon its plan to become emperor. The state of Qin didn't even dare to leave Hanggu Pass for 15 years. Zhao Fu, let's see if he has the ability to stop Qin's rise. The third message was, the 7 murders have appeared. The general star has returned to Qin? Zhao Fu did not expect that there would be so many people paying attention to the general star, and they even guessed that it belonged to Qin. Fortunately, they could not confirm this and could only guess that it most likely belonged to Qin. Right now, Zhao Fu really did not want to do anything that would attract too much attention to Qin. This would cause a lot of inconvenience, and would not be beneficial to Qin's development. There were also many people who commented that they were Mao Mountain's Zhang family and southern borders Miao family were willing to serve Qin and hoped that Qin's legatee would take them in. Of course, Zhao Fu did not have time to pay attention to these messages. Perhaps they had some ability, but they were still small fries. After looking through these messages, Zhao Fu hurriedly finished eating and was about to enter the Heaven Awaken world. However, at that moment, he received a call from his grandmother, saying that it was his grandpa's birthday today and that they should go for a reunion dinner. If it was a normal matter, Zhao Fu would have tactfully refused. However, it was his grandpa's birthday, and even though they had already eaten, Zhao Fu felt that it was better to go. Zhao Fu brought his personal bodyguard and bought a gift before heading to his grandpa's home. Zhao Fu felt quite complicated towards this familial love, and he felt that it was too unfamiliar. He had planned to leave after giving them the gift, but his grandpa and grandma kept chatting with him. They even asked if Zhao Fu had a girlfriend and wanted to introduce one to Zhao Fu. Even though there were a lot of things they talked about and the content of the conversation made Zhao Fu not know whether to laugh or cry, it made Zhao Fu feel a sense of acceptance towards this familial love. After staying there for a long time, Zhao Fu once again returned to the Heaven Awaken world. By now, another day had passed in the Heaven Awaken world, and a void beast had spawned in the den. Zhao Fu took one of its void crystals and started to open up the third path. Zhao Fu used the same method as before to open up the path to Red Plum Plains. He used a teleportation channel and used a normal city creation stone to arrive at Red Plum Plains, obtaining 10 achievement points. Zhao Fu didn't know if achievement points could be farmed or if he could obtain 10 achievement points in every region. If that was the case, becoming a baron would be incredibly easy. After all, going to a region would be incredibly difficult for ordinary people. However, it was now incredibly easy for Qin. Every 3 days, he would be able to go to another region. Becoming a baron required 1,000 achievement points, and going to a region would give him 10 achievement points. 10 regions would give him 100 achievement points, and 100 regions would give him 1,000 achievement points. Zhao Fu looked at the other people that Zhao Fu had brought. Even though they weren't players but indigenous residents, their achievement points had increased. This meant that the achievement points in this region were also effective for indigenous residents. Chapter 139. However, Zhao Fu felt that this method of obtaining achievement points definitely had its limit. He wasn't sure about the specifics, and he would have to test it himself to find out. Zhao Fu then looked at Red Plum Plains. Red Plum Plains was a plain, and most of it was grassy plains. The ground was covered with short, red fruits that looked like plums, which was why it was called Red Plum Plains. Moreover, because it was a plain, there were many different kinds of horses that lived here, and many players went to the grassy plains to catch horses. The ordinary horses here were brown horses, and they were the most common. Zhao Fu looked at them and found that whether it was in terms of size or endurance, they couldn't compare to his Black Forest horses. However, there were also horses called Red Lightning here. Just like its name, Red Lightning's entire body was red, including its mane and tail. When it ran, it was incredibly fast, like a bolt of red lightning. In terms of speed, it was slightly faster than the Black Forest horses, but in terms of jumping over obstacles, the Black Forest horses had a slight advantage. This was because the two types of horses lived in different environments. There were many trees in the forest, and there were many obstacles to leap over. On the other hand, the plains were flat, and there weren't many obstacles to run over. Zhao Fu was quite interested in the Red Lightning horses, and he wanted to see if he could obtain a den to raise them. Following this, Zhao Fu returned to proper business. Red Plum Plains only had 3 system main cities, which were called Great Ancient City, Drooping City, and Green Grass City. The buildings here were made of stone and wood, and they gave off an exotic aura. The first city Zhao Fu went to was Great Ancient City. He bought 20 properties and prepared to open a restaurant. After doing these things, Zhao Fu started to walk around Great Ancient City to see if he could make any other gains. At that moment, he found that there were many people gathered around a stall, and Zhao Fu went over to take a look out of curiosity. At the center of the stall was a young man who looked 24 or 25 years old. He wore black clothes and had a long saber on his back. His body gave off a sharp saber aura, and it seemed that he was a saber user. He was a player, and Zhao Fu felt quite shocked because it was rare to see a player give off such a sharp aura. Normally, Zhao Fu would only be able to sense this from indigenous residents. This person was most likely someone from an ancient martial arts family, and it was only because he had trained with the saber since he was young that he had such a powerful aura. There was a faint blue, oval-shaped jade on the stall in front of him. It was very smooth, and there was a picture of a horse's head engraved on it. After all, it was this item that had attracted so many people's gazes. Zhao Fu looked at it curiously and received this information. Horse Jade Soul. A wondrous item that can be used on a denver. However, it is limited to horses, and it can strengthen the horse's strength, increase the number of dens spawned by 15, and increase the chance of attracting high-grade horses by 30%. This item was quite good. First, it could strengthen the strength of the horse itself. Whether it was in terms of strength, speed, recovery, or endurance, the horse would be greatly enhanced. It could also increase a den's spawn rate by 15. Normally, a den could spawn 5 den per day, but after using this, it could spawn 20 den per day. The third stat was quite important, as a higher grade meant greater growth. This was quite rare, and Zhao Fu could use it on the Black Forest horse Denver. How much are you selling this for? Zhao Fu asked. The young man sitting at the stall glanced at it and calmly replied, "Not selling. I'm only trading for gold-grade materials." So they wanted gold-grade materials. Zhao Fu understood why this item hadn't been sold yet, even though it was quite good. Even though Zhao Fu already had epic-grade equipment, gold-grade equipment was incredibly rare on the market. Normally, gold-grade materials could only be found in large auctions, and they couldn't be found in ordinary shop. Zhao Fu thought for a moment. The horse jade soul was a strategic material that could increase a den's stats, and gold-grade materials weren't that important to Zhao Fu, so he could trade for it. Zhao Fu nodded and said, "Sure." Following this, Zhao Fu took out a pair of massive beast claws. The claws were black, and they gave off a chilling light. As soon as he took them out, they gave off a powerful and ferocious aura, causing the bystanders to take a step back and cry out, "Lord-grade material! These are the claws of a Lord-grade ironback demon bear." At that moment the young man's calm expression changed, and he looked at Zhao Fu with surprise as he said, "My name is Ling Wu, and I owe you a favor." Even though Zhao Fu felt that exchanging for the horse jade soul with the bear claws wasn't a bad deal, in other people's eyes, it was a loss. After all, gold-grade materials were incredibly rare, and to ordinary people, they were incredibly important treasures. What's more, Zhao Fu had taken out a material from a lord-grade creature, which was even rarer than ordinary ores, so its value was much higher. Moreover, the horse jade soul was only useful to lord-grade players, and it required a horse Denver. Most solo players wouldn't be able to use it, so it seemed that Zhao Fu was at a disadvantage. However, Ling Wu wasn't someone who would take advantage of others, so he said that he owed Zhao Fu a favor. Hearing Ling Wu's words, Zhao Fu was quite surprised to receive a favor for no reason. However, Ling Wu's background wasn't simple at all, and he was quite skilled. Perhaps this favor would be useful in the future, so Zhao Fu didn't refuse. He nodded and said, "My name is Zhao Xian." Ling Wu nodded, indicating that he would remember this name. Following this, the two of them didn't say anything else, and Ling Wu took the bear claws while Zhao Fu took the horse jade soul. After obtaining the materials that he wanted, Ling Wu got up and left. Zhao Fu continued to walk around Great Ancient City, but he didn't find anything, so he decided to go to the next system main city and buy some property. At that moment, Zhao Fu turned and walked towards the teleportation channel. Suddenly, a 12-year-old beggar wearing tattered clothes and covered in dirt bumped into Zhao Fu. He looked like he had been starving for a long time, and his vision was blurry as he swayed and stumbled into Zhao Fu. After bumping into Zhao Fu, the little beggar hurriedly came to his senses and hurriedly bowed in apology. "Sir, sorry." With that, the little beggar ran away in fear. Zhao Fu stood in place and calmly turned his head. He watched as the little beggar ran away and slowly disappeared from his sight. In a dark alley, the little beggar smiled proudly. As he walked, he tossed a jade pendant in his hand. Suddenly, Chapter 140. Only when people stand at the highest point, when they are at their most confident and pleased, will the memory of falling from such a high place be engraved in their hearts. Zhao Fu coldly looked at the young beggar as his hand gripped the young beggar's throat and started to slowly apply force. The young beggar felt as if his neck was about to snap, and his face became incredibly red. He tried to pry open the hand around his throat, but no matter how much strength he used, he was unable to break free at all. The young beggar felt as if he was going to suffocate, and his legs flailed about wildly. "Let go of my little brother!" Two figures appeared beside him and loudly yelled at Zhao Fu. Hearing this, Zhao Fu turned and saw that it was a boy and a girl who looked around 14 or 15 years old. They looked quite delicate and they looked quite similar. They were most likely twins, and both of them held daggers as they savagely glared at Zhao Fu. Seeing their childish faces, Zhao Fu lightly laughed and casually threw the young beggar away. The young beggar's body flew out like a sandbag and crashed into a wall, causing a muffled sound to ring out as he fell to the ground and fainted. Seeing this, the twins angrily gripped their daggers and rushed over incredibly quickly. If a normal person saw them, they would only see two black blurs rushing towards them. Moments later, the young man arrived in front of Zhao Fu and slashed at Zhao Fu with his dagger. Even though the young man was incredibly fast, in front of Zhao Fu, he was nothing. In fact, Zhao Fu didn't even use a weapon. Instead, he used his king's power and formed a sword with his fingers. A black light gathered around them, making them look like swords. He slashed out. A faint arc of light flashed through the air. Shing! The dagger collided with Zhao Fu's fingers, and the young man was completely dumbfounded. The dagger in his hand had been sliced in two, and in the next second, he was sent flying by Zhao Fu. He crashed to the ground and was unable to get up. Suddenly, seeing that her big brother was at a disadvantage, the young woman went around to the side and was abnormally fast. In just an instant, she stabbed towards Zhao Fu with her dagger, and Zhao Fu instinctively slashed out with his fingers. However, after thinking about it, he realized that the opponent was a girl, and Zhao Fu did not have any intention of killing them. He just wanted to teach them a lesson. Therefore, when Zhao Fu pointed his sword to the side, the girl thought that Zhao Fu was going to attack, so she also dodged. Ah! A sharp cry sounded out as the sharp fingers tore open the young woman's clothes. Zhao Fu felt quite surprised as he looked at the young woman's chest, revealing a large area of white, tender skin, as well as a pair of developing breasts. The girl hurriedly covered her private parts in panic and retreated far away. Her eyes were red, and she looked as if she was about to cry as she stared at Zhao Fu. Zhao Fu felt quite awkward, and he decided to just teach them a lesson. It was fortunate that they had fallen into his hands this time, but if they fell into someone else's hands again, they might lose their lives. He bent down and picked up the jade pendant that the young beggar had stolen. Zhao Fu normally kept all of his items in his spatial ring, but he kept this jade pendant with him because it was the one He Xianru had given him to conceal his fate. Zhao Fu couldn't afford to lose this item. Zhao Fu didn't want to lose it. Just as he was about to pick up the jade pendant and leave, a fist suddenly shot towards him. A fist brought with it a sharp gust of wind as it flew towards Zhao Fu, and Zhao Fu didn't even think as he clenched his fist to meet it. Boom! The two fists collided and an explosion sounded out. Zhao Fu was forced back a step, while the other figure retreated 7 or 8 steps before stopping. At the same time, Zhao Fu saw that it was a girl who looked around 17 or 18 years old. Her facial features were exquisite, and she was quite good-looking. She wore tattered clothes, but her face was sickly pale. This girl is so strong. When Zhao Fu had punched out, he had only used less than 10% of his strength. He had long since sensed that his opponent's cultivation wasn't very high, but he hadn't expected her to be so strong that even Zhao Fu had been forced back a step. "Sir, I don't know how my 3 little brothers and sisters offended you, but come at me and spare them." The sickly girl wiped away the blood at the corner of her lips and looked at Zhao Fu seriously. From their exchange just then, she could tell that this black-cloaked person's strength was unfathomable, and she wasn't a match for him at all. She had used her full strength and had attacked first, but she had only been able to force her opponent back a step, while she had been lightly injured. "I really don't know how my 3 little brothers and sisters offended such a grand figure when I was sick." Zhao Fu felt quite interested in this sickly girl, and he felt that her strength seemed to come from some sort of bloodline or constitution. There was very little information about bloodlines and constitutions in the Heaven Awakened world, and Zhao Fu didn't have much information about them. Hearing the sickly girl's words, Zhao Fu thought about it. It had been a long time since he had met such a special indigenous resident, and Zhao Fu understood how special she was. Her cultivation was only at stage 0 to 3, but she had such great power. She was a genius, and he could take her back and nurture her. With Zhao Fu's current strength, he could use her 3 little brothers and sisters to force this sickly girl to submit to him. However, this sort of method was too underhanded, and it wouldn't help her wholeheartedly submit to Qin. Zhao Fu didn't hide anything and lightly smiled as he said, "I'm quite interested in you." Hearing this, the sickly girl's expression froze and she asked, "Are you saying that if I submit to you, you'll spare my 3 little brothers and sisters?" "You could say that, but I won't use their lives to threaten you. I never planned on killing them, so you can think about submitting to me," Zhao Fu explained. The sickly girl thought for a moment before asking, "You really won't harm them?" Zhao Fu earnestly nodded. "All right. I can agree, but you have to give my little brothers and sisters some money and prepare a safe place for them to live so that they won't be harmed." The sickly girl quickly agreed because this mysterious black-cloaked figure was simply too powerful. He could control the lives of her siblings with a single thought. Moreover, the sickly girl felt that this mysterious black-cloaked figure had held back, or else her little brothers and sisters would have long since died. She felt that he wasn't an evil person, so after thinking about it for a long time, the sickly girl quickly agreed. "Big sis Qing, let's not be separated. I don't want that money," the 14 or 15-year-old girl said as she tied up her clothes and covered her important areas. Hearing the conversation between Big Sis Qing and the mysterious black-cloaked figure, she hurriedly ran over and pulled on Big Sis Qing's arm. The young man who had been sent flying clutched his chest as he climbed up with great difficulty and said, "Big Sis Qing, back then you said that the 4 of us would never be separated. We don't want to leave you." Hearing their words, the sickly girl felt a warmth in her heart, and she felt quite touched. At that moment, Zhao Fu said that he could take in the 3 of them. Even though they were quite young, their skills far surpassed those of ordinary people, and they were worth nurturing. Chapter 141. What do you think? Do you want to come with me? Zhao Fu asked as he looked at the 3 people hugging each other. The 3 of them thought about it and decided that none of them wanted to be separated. In the end, they nodded and agreed before running over to the unconscious little beggar and waking him up. After waking up, the little beggar screamed in terror and instinctively struggled, wanting to run away. Could be seen just how traumatized Zhao Fu was. However, only then did he realize that the people around him were his big sister, second brother, and third sister. Only then did he calm down. Following this, the 3 of them told him about submitting, and the little beggar nodded and agreed to come with them. However, the little beggar's fear towards Zhao Fu had not decreased, and he did not dare to look up at the mysterious black-cloaked figure. Following this, Zhao Fu asked them some questions and found out some information about them. The 4 of them were not blood-related siblings and were instead orphans who had gathered together because of something. The sickly young girl was called Tuobaqing, the boy was called Wu Ling, the girl was called Wu Qing, and the little beggar was called Lu Zhongchang. At the same time, because they had submitted and recognized Zhao Fu as their master, Zhao Fu could look at their stats and grades. What shocked Zhao Fu was that Tuobaqing was SSS grade, while Wu Ling, Wu Qing, and Lu Zhongchang were a grade. Wu Ling and the other 2 were a grade, so Zhao Fu was not too surprised. What shocked Zhao Fu was that Tuobaqing, the sickly young girl, was actually SSS grade. Putting aside historical figures like Bai Qi and Wang Jian, it was the first time Zhao Fu had seen an SSS grade indigenous resident. With this grade, most indigenous residents would be city lords, and Zhao Fu had never thought that this sickly young girl would have SSS grade. The system main cities had massive populations, but there were very few people with S grade or above grade. However, Tuoba Ching had SSS grade, and no one had discovered it yet. S grade or above grade was quite important to the system main cities, and SSS grade was incredibly rare. It was impossible for the government not to take her away and nurture her. Moreover, whenever an S-grade person spawned in the origin, there would be a system announcement, such as a golden light. With Tuoba Ching's SSS grade, it was impossible for her to be in such dire straits. Could it be that there's some huge conspiracy behind this? Or is there a hidden secret? With Zhao Fu's cautious personality, he couldn't help but think in this direction because this matter didn't make sense. Wait a minute. Suddenly, Zhao Fu thought of Tuoba Ching. The reason why it had not been discovered yet was that Tuoba Ching had not come from the origin and had given birth through normal means. Even though there were dens and origin lands in the Heaven Awakened world, indigenous residents could still marry and have children, which was something that players could not do. There were no system announcements for those who had given birth through normal means, and only the Lord would be able to find out their grade. It was very rare for someone with high grade to appear in a common district like this, and the Lord here didn't seem to care about this. Zhao Fu asked Tuoba Ching and found out that she had not been spawned from the origin. This made Zhao Fu feel quite relieved, and he couldn't help but feel quite delighted. This time, he had been completely lucky to obtain an SSS grade person. However, Zhao Fu still didn't know what kind of power she had. Her stats were not displayed, and there were only a few question marks next to her race. "Let's go," Zhao Fu said as he looked at the four people's tattered clothes. The four of them didn't say anything and silently followed behind Zhao Fu. Tuoba Ching wasn't as powerful as before, and her face was pale and weak. She couldn't even walk steadily, and Wu Qing supported her. Seeing that Tuoba Ching was so ill, it was difficult to imagine how she had been able to release such power. Seeing this, Zhao Fu threw a bottle of special effect healing pills to her and said, "Eat this. It's good for your body." Tuoba Ching stretched out her hand and caught the bottle. It wasn't just her or the other three people's attitudes towards Zhao Fu became gentler, and they weren't as sharp as before. This special effect healing pill was something that Zhao Fu had spent a lot of money to buy from a main city, and he had used many precious medicinal ingredients to make it. After Tuoba Ching consumed the pill, her face became slightly ruddy. Following this, Zhao Fu brought the four of them to a clothing store and said, "Choose a few clothes for yourselves." Because Tuoba Ching and the others were orphans, they could only survive with great difficulty. It was already quite good if they could eat their fill every day, and this was the first time they had come to such a place, so they were quite reserved. When Wu Ling and the others heard Zhao Fu's words, their eyes became filled with joy. They looked at the exquisite clothes around them, but in the end, their gazes fell on Tuoba Ching. After all, Tuoba Ching was their leader. Tuoba Ching weakly nodded, and the three of them happily ran over to the side to choose clothes. Seeing how happy her little brothers and sisters were, a trace of a smile appeared on Tuoba Ching's face. She turned to Zhao Fu and softly said, "Thank you." Hearing this, Zhao Fu turned to look at her and said calmly, "No need." At that moment, Wu Qing came over with a few clothes and said happily, "Big Sis Qing, I've chosen quite a few clothes for you. I've chosen quite a few clothes. I've even helped you choose a few. Try them on." Tuoba Ching shook her head and lightly smiled as she said, "It's fine, I'll just choose a few." Arg! Wu Qing cried out in dissatisfaction, "Big Sis Qing, don't. I've already helped you choose. Let's go in and try them on." In the end, Tuoba Ching was unable to refuse Wu Qing, and she dragged her into a changing room. Following this, the two of them appeared in front of Zhao Fu as if they had become two completely different people. Tuoba Ching had changed into a plain white dress, and with her pale and beautiful face and slim figure, she gave off the aura of a young lady. She was gentle, intelligent, and gentle to the point that anyone would want to protect her. Wu Qing had changed into a light green dress, and her aura became more elegant. Her childish face gave off a refreshing feeling, and Zhao Fu casually glanced at her chest, causing her to blush. After the four of them bought clothes, Zhao Fu took them out of the clothing store. When he was about to take them back to Qin Town, Lu Zhongchang's stomach began to growl. Zhao Fu could only take them to a restaurant and let them have a good meal. Finally, he took them back to Qin Town. At this moment, the four of them finally found out about Zhao Fu's true identity, and were also shocked. Zhao Fu first asked Li Si to arrange the accommodations for Wu Ling and the other two. He then brought Tuo Baqing to Zhang Baishu to see what illness she had. The healing pills that Zhao Fu had given her were mainly for treating injuries, but they couldn't cure all illnesses. Tuo Baqing's illness was quite strange, and Zhao Fu had asked her about it before. Every year, this illness would make her feel weak for a while, and sometimes she would feel like she was being burned by fire, which was quite painful. Chapter 142. After examining Tuo Baqing in detail, Zhang Baishu cupped his hands and said respectfully, "Your Majesty, I'm very sorry. It's not an illness, it's caused by this lady's special constitution." Zhao Fu was surprised and continued to ask, "Then, can you tell what kind of physique she has?" Hearing this, Zhang Baishu shook his head and said, "Your Highness, this girl's physique is truly unique, and I can't accurately determine it, but I do know some of the causes and how to deal with it." Hearing Zhang Baishu's words, Zhao Fu felt slightly disappointed. He had thought that Zhang Baishu knew about this strange constitution. However, it was already quite good that Zhang Baishu had a way to deal with it. Following this, Zhao Fu asked what they should do. Zhang Baishu explained, "The reason why this lady is like this is because she goes through a transformation every year. This process requires a large amount of blood-refining spirit medicine, and without these medicines, this lady will fall into pain and weakness. As long as we can find blood-refining spirit medicine to help her complete the transformation, there won't be any problems." After hearing Zhang Baishu's explanation, Zhao Fu understood and asked what blood refinement spirit medicine was. Zhang Baishu replied that blood refinement spirit medicine referred to blood-type spirit medicines, such as blood ginseng, blood lingji mushroom, and blood knotweed. They could cause one's blood to go through great changes and refine. Now that he understood, Zhao Fu didn't have the blood-refining spirit medicine on hand, so he could only order people to go to the system cities to buy it. Lying on the sickbed, Tuo Baqing felt quite apologetic as she looked at Zhao Fu. She had not been of much help and had instead caused him so much trouble. She had heard Zhang Baishu's explanation of the blood refinement spirit medicine and felt that it would definitely be much more expensive than ordinary spirit medicines. Ordinary spirit medicines were already very expensive, let alone the special blood refinement spirit medicine. Moreover, they would need a lot more in the future, so it would be an astronomical figure. Tuo Baqing did not want to cause any trouble for Zhao Fu, and she did not want Zhao Fu to sacrifice so much for nothing. As such, she said weakly, "Your Majesty, I'm very sorry. I think it's better to forget it. I'll be fine after a while. You don't have to waste so many elixirs on me." Zhao Fu chuckled and gave him a comforting look. At this time, back in Qin Town, Zhao Fu did not wear a black cloak, which reduced the previous mysterious and cold feeling, but more warmth and distance. Zhao Fu said, "Don't worry. You don't have to worry about anything. These blood refinement spiritual herbs are nothing to me. Besides, since you've pledged your allegiance to me, I'll be responsible for you." Hearing Zhao Fu's words, Tuo Baqing felt incredibly moved. Even though Tuo Baqing seemed very mature, she was still a 17-year-old girl. Her heart was very weak, and she was not that strong. Growing up, she had endured many cruel and cold things, and this was not something someone her age should be enduring. At this moment, when she heard Zhao Fu's promise to her, her heart was really touched, and she sincerely acknowledged Zhao Fu. Seeing how teary her eyes were, Zhao Fu could not help but rub her head. He could see himself in her. After his mother had died, he had struggled to survive in this world by himself. Facing this intimate action, Tuo Qing's face became slightly red, and she looked quite embarrassed. Zhao Fu suddenly realized that his actions had been quite rude, and he felt quite awkward as he took back his hand. He ordered people to buy some spirit medicines, and after doing as Zhang Baishu had said, he boiled them into a bowl of blood-red soup and fed it to Tuo Qing. After Tuo Qing drank the blood-red soup, her face quickly became ruddy, and she did not feel as much pain as before. It could be seen that Zhang Baishu's method was quite effective. Seeing this, Zhao Fu had Tuo Qing lie down and rest for a while. Following this, Zhao Fu left the medicine center and went to the Black Forest horse den. Little Black and Little Gray were playing around, while Little White lazily lay by the side, watching the two beasts play around. Seeing Zhao Fu arrive, the three beasts were incredibly delighted. It had been quite some time since Zhao Fu had accompanied them. Zhao Fu comforted the three beasts that had run over and affectionately rubbed their heads against him. He then took out the horse Jade Soul and chose to use it. The horse Jade Soul gave off a jade-like light as it flew out of his hand and turned into a mighty horse. It neighed and leapt towards the horse statue in the air before fusing into it. At that moment, the Black Forest horse den started to change. Whether it was the horse statue floating in the air or the stone platform on the ground, they all started to give off a trace of jade, as if they were made of beautiful jade. At the same time, Zhao Fu found that the Black Forest horses, which had a base strength of stage 3 to 5, had become much stronger. Now, their base strength was around stage 5 to 7, which was quite a big change. If he had a few more horse Jade Souls, he would be able to raise the Black Forest horse's strength to stage 1. If a stage 1 warhorse was paired with a stage 1 soldier, it would not be as simple as 1+1. It would be more than enough to take on an ordinary stage 2 soldier, and it would be enough to crush ordinary cavalry. Zhao Fu was quite satisfied with the horse Jade Soul's effects, and he wondered how Ling Wu had obtained it. Following this, Zhao Fu planned to go to Red Plum Plains. Because he had encountered Tuo Qing, Zhao Fu's original plans had been disrupted, and he had not yet settled the properties in the other two system main cities. As Zhao Fu took care of these matters, he turned his gaze to Bai Qi, who was exploring the outside world. At that moment, Bai Qi was leading 5,000 soldiers and 3,000 skeletons towards a certain place. The soldiers in charge of scouting had found an advanced village ahead of them. Now that Zhao Fu had handed over the military to Bai Qi, and Bai Qi had the ability to attack advanced villages, Zhao Fu did not have to personally attack advanced villages. After all, Bai Qi had taught Zhao Fu some of his battle tactic. Bai Qi stealthily advanced, and after a while, he arrived at his destination. This advanced village was different from the other villages. It was not a native village, nor was it an outlander village. This outlander village's appearance and attire were similar to that of an ethnic minority. They all had rough appearances and wore clothes that were quite different from the traditional clothes that most people wore. This was an advanced village of the Xianbei race. Chapter 143. These outlanders were all quite big and muscular, and they were all quite unruly. They were a stark contrast to the gentleness of the Central Plains Confucianism. The Xianbei people were no exception. Bai Qi, who was observing from the side, found a few strengths and weaknesses. They were slightly stronger than ordinary people, and they would be good soldiers on the battlefield. However, most people who revered strength were quite rash. Bai Qi could immediately tell that this advanced village had a few weaknesses. Not only were its defenses not strong, but its management was also quite chaotic. This Xianbei advanced village had roughly 9,000 or so people, and Bai Qi had 5,000 soldiers and 3,000 skeleton soldiers. With Bai Qi's strength, destroying this advanced village would be a piece of cake. The key was how to reduce their losses and obtain the greatest benefit. Of course, Bai Qi knew that their exploration team's main purpose, apart from discovering resources, was to steal people. As such, Bai Qi decided to follow Zhao Fu's plan. Zhao Fu's plan was quite simple. However, Bai Qi's plan was much simpler and faster than Zhao Fu's, and he had a plan in mind. In history, most Outlanders were nomadic and did not plant crop. However, in the Heaven Awaken world there were some changes. Even though they still had many livestock, they also planted some crop. This had a lot to do with the terrain. If it was a grassy plains, the Xianbei people would have been nomadic, but because this was a forest, it was impossible for them to raise large numbers of cattle and sheep. However, the Xianbei village still had a lot of livestock, roughly 2,000 or so cows, 4,000 or so deer, and Bai Qi wanted to make use of this. Bai Qi had brought 5 generals with him, and he gave them a series of orders. Now they just had to wait for nightfall. Just like before, the Xianbei village did not do anything out of the ordinary. Time gradually passed, and soon the sun set. The golden light of the setting sun shined over the village, making people feel as if they were outside the Great Wall. The lord of this place was a boorish man, and he was the strongest. In a race that respected strength, as long as you were the strongest, you would definitely be the leader. Whether or not you had the ability to manage was secondary. His name was Lu Ro. In the hearts of the residents, he was a very domineering and powerful man. Although he was cruel at times, such as chopping guards into pieces when they made a small mistake, he liked to use cruel methods to torture people. If people looked at him now, they would think that he was a cruel lord. However, many people still obeyed him, as this was a world where the strong preyed on the weak. Everything that the strong did was natural, and there were no moral restrictions. This was similar to Outlanders like orcs and goblins. Before they knew it, it was already dinner time. The Xianbei people mainly ate meat as their main source of food, and other grains were used as supplementary food. Most of the Xianbei people would stew meat in large pots, and in order to not be discovered by the Xianbei people, Bai Qi's group couldn't light a fire, so they could only eat dry rations. Time continued to pass slowly. In the blink of an eye, it was midnight. When the night was dim, the plan began. The first to move were the 3,000 undead. Undead were called ghosts in the east, and no matter if it was in the west or in the east, animals were extremely sensitive to or afraid of undead. The Xianbei village's livestock area was to the north of the village, and as the undead approached, the cows and sheep within the fences started to become restless. As the undead came closer, the deathly aura became denser and denser, and the cows and sheep started to whine in fear and charge at the fences. At that moment, some people felt that something was off. Seeing a large number of undead appear to the north of the village, they immediately yelled, "Enemy attack! Enemy attack! Enemy attack!" Countless Xianbei people woke up from their dreams, but by now, the 10 Kings' undead cavalrymen had brought a large number of skeletons to the north of the village. Luckily, these were skeletons summoned by the King's undead cavalrymen, so most of their strength had been preserved. Ordinary skeletons would not have been able to move so quickly. The northern side of the Xianbei village was heavily guarded because they raised a large number of livestock, which was the main source of food for the Xianbei people. The 10 Kings' undead cavalrymen and 3,000 skeletons rushed over, and the Xianbei people could not understand why so many undead were attacking their village. However, the two sides quickly started to fight. The King's undead cavalrymen, who were riding on their skeleton horses, gave off immense power as they charged through the wooden fences. It was as if a hole had been torn open, and countless undead and skeletons flooded in. The Xianbei soldiers also arrived, and they quickly started to fight. At that moment, the Xianbei village's leader, Lu Ruo, woke up on his bed with a few naked women lying next to him. Lu Ruo savagely pushed them aside, and hearing the sounds of fighting in the north, he put on a set of clothes and walked out. At that moment, someone came to report, "Leader, there are roughly 3,000 undead attacking the north side of the village, and the situation is quite dire. These undead are much more powerful than ordinary undead." Hearing this, Lu Ruo frowned and looked quite furious, and he prepared to go and take a look. Roar! Suddenly, an ear-piercing cry sounded out, bringing with it the roar of death. This was from the king's undead cavalry, and after hearing this roar, the berserk livestock seemed to lose control and broke through the fences and started to run in all directions. Some madly charged into houses, while others charged at people. As the Xianbei village went berserk, the king's undead cavalrymen began to madly run around. These undead cavalrymen were the Xianbei village's future food, and they couldn't afford to lose them. Seeing this, Lu Ruo quickly yelled, "Hurry! Control these undead cavalrymen!" The reason why the Xianbei village was in such chaos was because Bai Qi had chosen to attack the livestock area. Now, while the Xianbei people hurried to defend against the skeleton soldiers, they also had to send a large number of people to control the undead cavalrymen. Ordinary sheep and deer were easy to deal with, but berserk cows were not easy to deal with. Even if they didn't die, they would be heavily injured. Bai Qi's plan had only just begun. Soon, Dok and a few of his generals led 4,000 or so soldiers to attack from the east side of the Xianbei village. The Xianbei village was already in chaos, and they lacked manpower. Dok's attack was like a sharp knife stabbing into the Xianbei village, making it incredibly difficult for them to defend. After receiving this news, Lu Ruo could only order his people to ignore the undead cavalrymen and hurriedly lead his people to fight. Just as the two sides met and were about to fight, suddenly, a group of 800 fully armed cavalrymen charged from the west like a sharp spear, unstoppable and unstoppable, to the rear of Lu Ruo. Chapter 144. The cavalry's charge caused the Xianbei soldiers to be caught in a pincer attack. Adding on the chaos, morale, stats, and equipment, the Xianbei soldiers could not compare to Qin's soldiers at all. Seeing the pitiful state of his village, Lu Ruo furiously chopped down a few soldiers charging at him. Lu Ruo was indeed quite powerful, and seeing this, Dok gripped his spear and prepared to rush up. Bai Qi was dressed in white clothes and had a blood-red sword at his waist. He rode on his tall black forest horse and calmly watched the battle. Even though the Xianbei soldiers were brave and fierce, they were not a match for the Xianbei soldiers, and some of them even started to flee. Following this, Bai Qi's gaze fell on Lu Ruo. Just as Dok was about to rush up, Bai Qi said, "Dok, retreat." Bai Qi said. By now, the outcome of the battle had been decided. In order to preserve the population, he had to end this battle as quickly as possible, so Bai Qi wanted to personally act. Bai Qi drew the 7 murders sword from his waist and lightly galloped on his warhorse. The warhorse raised its hooves and charged forward like a black blur. Lu Ruo understood that Bai Qi was the main commander, and if he killed him, there was still a chance of turning the situation around. As such, he roared and raised his saber as he rushed at Bai Qi. However, he had overestimated himself and underestimated Bai Qi. Bai Qi had the 7 murder swords buff and had stage 1 cultivation, so how could he be a match for him? As soon as they clashed, the outcome of the battle was already decided. A blood-red sword light flashed as a head flew into the air. Bai Qi brushed past Lu Ruo on his warhorse, but Lu Ruo had already died, unable to even take a single attack from Bai Qi. After Bai Qi killed Lu Ruo, the blood-red star in the sky gave off an even brighter blood-red light. Bai Qi arrived at the center of the battlefield and looked at the chaotic and bloody scenes around him. He slowly raised the 7 murders sword and lightly shouted, soldier aura formation. Traces of blood-red light rose up from Qin's soldiers' bodies, and they gave off a metallic aura as they gathered towards Bai Qi. Scree! Suddenly, a sound that could shatter rocks and pierce through gold shook the heavens, and resounded in a radius of 10 miles. A giant blood-colored eagle appeared in the sky, spreading its wings and soaring in the sky. Its eyes were sharp and its claws were sharp. That enormous, icy cold, and murderous aura was like an avalanche, suppressing everything in its path. The Xianbei people had long since lost their will to fight after Lu Ruo's death, and under this terrifying aura, their hearts crumbled. They immediately threw down their weapons and knelt on the ground, choosing to surrender. Bai Qi was dressed in white and rode on his black forest horse as he stood at the center of the blood and corpses. The Xianbei people who were still alive were kneeling around him, and with the massive blood-red eagle circling above his head, Bai Qi looked as if he was a god descending from the heavens. From then on, the name of the white-robed general, which was feared by countless people in the future, gradually spread. With the surrender of the Xianbei people, the battle was quickly pacified. By now, Doke had finished compiling the data and reported, "General Bai, because the battle ended quickly, we quickly took control of the situation. Because the battle ended quickly, we quickly took control of the situation. We captured 7,356 Xianbei people in total. Most of the livestock escaped, but 20% of them remained, along with some weapons and 360,000 silver coins. Our losses weren't too great. 68 of them were lightly injured, 3 of them were heavily injured, and no one died. On the other hand, because the skeletons fought against the Xianbei's main force, they lost around 500 skeletons." Hearing Doke's report, Bai Qi nodded. His tactics were ferocious, simple, and quick, but the downside was that there were many casualties. However, because of their superior equipment, cultivation, stats, and tactics, the number of casualties was extremely low. Even though the skeletons had lost 500 skeletons, this wasn't a big deal. They were originally summoned from the king's undead cavalry's corpses, and they could use the Xianbei corpses to summon more skeletons. Bai Qi was quite satisfied with the results of this battle, and after the battle, he didn't hold back and gave some money to the soldiers. At the same time, he slaughtered cows and sheep for them to eat as a celebration. Following this, Bai Qi went to the barracks and found that there were 3 profession change stone steels. Xianbei soldier, E-grade military description. Soldiers of the Xianbei clan, effect, receives the basic cultivation technique Xianbei saber technique. Xianbei archer, E-grade military description. Archers of the Xianbei clan, effect, receives the skill Xianbei archery technique. Xianbei shield bearer, E-grade military description. Shield bearers of the Xianbei clan, effect, receives the skill shield bearer. There was nothing special about these professions, but they were slightly weaker than Qin's basic professions. However, they were better than some of the legacy professions of some of the smaller families. Following this, Bai Qi went to the village hall. There was a silver cube floating in the air, which represented a silver-grade city creation heart. Bai Qi placed his hand on it and was about to conquer it when he received a system announcement. "Do you wish to conquer the lost race, Xianbei village?" System announcement. You belong to a Chinese clan and have unlocked the nation fate. By conquering this village, you will obtain many benefits. Your Qin's fate will fuse with this trace of Xianbei fate. The more Xianbei fate you fuse with, the more favorability the Xianbei clan will have towards you. They will no longer view you as enemies and may even submit to you. You will obtain a Xianbei tier, which can be used to create items or to summon people from the Xianbei clan. Bai Qi felt quite surprised that there were so many benefits to conquering a foreign clan's village. He immediately chose to conquer it and relocate it. The basic structures of the Xianbei village disappeared, and all of the other structures collapsed. Finally, the light from the Rubik's Cube receded and slowly floated into Bai Qi's hand. Apart from this, a teardrop-shaped object fell from the sky. It was transparent like a teardrop. This was most likely the Xianbei tear. At the same time, Zhao Fu, who was busy opening a restaurant, received a system announcement. Congratulations, your subordinate Bai Qi has conquered the lost race, Xianbei village. Your Qin's fate has fused with a trace of Xianbei fate. Congratulations, your subordinate Bai Qi has conquered an advanced village. Your king's ring has given you 400 achievement points. Congratulations, your subordinate Bai Qi has relocated an advanced village. Your king's ring has given you 41,000 EXP, Xianbei. Chapter 145. Conquering an advanced village had given so much EXP, and if there were a few more, Qin Town would have long since leveled up. However, it was a pity that there were very few advanced villages, and finding one was already quite good. Most of them were basic villages, followed by intermediate villages, and then advanced villages. In terms of town-level towns, even if each area was as big as a province, the number of towns would definitely not exceed 160. After looking through all of the system announcements, Zhao Fu turned his attention back to the matter of opening a restaurant. Zhao Fu looked over at Bai Qi, who looked up at the teardrop falling from the sky. It was the Xianbei tear, and Bai Qi curiously stretched out his hand to catch it before examining it. Xianbei tear. The heavens took pity on a lost clan and allowed a clan that had disappeared to reappear in the heaven-awakened world. However, this was their last chance and their fate. Now that their village has been conquered, their fates have been decided. Xianbei tear. Xianbei village has been conquered, and their clan's fate has been fused with or devoured. This is the sorrow of a clan. Effects can be used to fuse items or summon people. 100 Xianbei tears can fuse into a gold-grade item, which can summon an S-grade Xianbei person. 1,000 Xianbei tears can fuse into a legendary grade item, which can summon an SS-grade Xianbei person. 10,000 Xianbei tears can fuse into an epic grade item, which can summon an SSS-grade Xianbei person. This is the limit, and can no longer be fused or summoned. After looking at the Xianbei tear's information, Bai Qi put it into his spatial ring. He would give it to Zhao Fu when he returned. He felt that the Xianbei tear was not very useful, as it required conquering 100 Xianbei villages to fuse a gold-grade item or summon an S-grade Xianbei person. Evidently, the Xianbei tear's value was too low. Just conquering 100 Xianbei villages was worth tens of times more than the 100 Xianbei tears. However, being able to fuse an epic-grade item or summon an SSS-grade Xianbei person was quite attractive. However, it required far too many Xianbei tears, which was equivalent to conquering 10,000 Xianbei villages. This was simply too difficult, and it was simply impossible right now. As such, Bai Qi felt that this item would not be very useful, as it would be too difficult to complete. It would only be useful in later stages of the game. In actuality, the biggest harvest this time was the 7,000 or so people. Bai Qi had heard from Zhao Fu that the Qin Resistance Alliance was incredibly dangerous, especially the school of vertical and horizontal. As someone who had been in the same generation as the 100 schools of thought, Bai Qi naturally knew how terrifying this branch of the school of vertical and horizontal was. Now that the vertical branch of the school of vertical and horizontal had shown hostility, he didn't know what the attitude of the horizontal branch was. Now, Qin had to develop several times faster in order to deal with future threat. After resting for a night, Bai Qi led the 7,000 or so captives back. With so many captives, they simply couldn't continue exploring. On the other side, Zhao Fu finished his work in Hongmei Plain and returned to Qin Town. Another day passed. The next day, Zhao Fu came to the medicine hall and saw that after a day of rest, Tuo Ching had completely recovered. Her complexion was ruddy, and she did not look weak at all. The blood-refining spirit medicine had been very effective on her. However, this was only temporary. If she lacked more spirit medicines, her body would become weaker again. However, she had Zhao Fu's support, so there was nothing to worry about. Currently, Tuo Ching was with Wu Ling and the others, and they were all happy that Tuo Ching had recovered. Seeing Zhao Fu come in, they all felt quite grateful but also felt a bit awkward as they bowed to him. Now that they were in Qin Town, they had to learn this etiquette. At first, they were not used to it, so they felt quite awkward. Seeing the four of them, Zhao Fu lightly smiled and nodded as he said, "You four, come with me." Of course, Tuo Ching and the others did not know why Zhao Fu was looking for them, so they could only follow behind Zhao Fu in confusion. They then used a teleportation channel to leave Qin Town and go to another place. Most of the guards here were ratfolk, and it was the first time that Wu Ling and the others had seen so many ratfolk, so they felt quite afraid. Even Tuo Ching felt quite nervous when she saw so many ratfolk. After all, humans and outlanders were on opposing sides, so seeing so many ratfolk would cause her to feel this way. However, seeing how respectful the ratfolk were towards Zhao Fu, their fear gradually disappeared. Following this, the four of them followed Zhao Fu to a large hall. There was nothing in this hall, and it was quite spacious. There was only a stone stele within. "You four, put your hands on it and see if you can change professions," Zhao Fu said. Hearing this, the four of them nodded and placed their hands on the stone stele, following which rays of light flashed around their bodies. Seeing this, Zhao Fu felt quite delighted. Zhao Fu's intention was to nurture Tuo Ching and the others into assassins, and he felt that they were quite suited for this profession. As such, he had brought them here to see if they could obtain the recognition of the assassin profession change stone stele. Since they could obtain the recognition of the assassin profession change stone stele, they indeed had the potential to become assassins. As for the next stage of the profession trial, which required them to kill underworld ghosts, Zhao Fu did not let them do it for now. After all, the four of them did not have any cultivation, and killing underworld ghosts would be too difficult for them. Zhao Fu did not let them do it for now, but he trusted in their abilities and potential, especially Tuo Ching. Following this, Zhao Fu took out the remaining 7 assassin equipment set. These pieces of equipment were all equipment that could grow, and they would grow with their owner. With the Assassin Lord Ring, Zhao Fu would be able to use more power, so it would be better for these pieces of equipment to find owners as soon as possible. Zhao Fu did not hide anything, and he briefly explained the uses and functions of the assassin equipment set. The four of them understood why Zhao Fu valued them, as well as how important the assassin equipment sets were. They felt incredibly grateful, but they also had different thoughts. For example, Wu Ling simply wanted to repay Zhao Fu after she became more powerful. Tuo Ching's heart felt incredibly warm, and she felt that she would never be able to repay Zhao Fu in this lifetime. However, Wu Qing also had a different thought. Could it be that His Highness was treating her so well because he had seen her naked body? On the other hand, Lu Zhongchang felt that he would do whatever Zhao Fu told him to. There was nothing he could do about it. Back then, Zhao Fu had left a huge shadow in his young heart. Chapter 146. Wu Ling chose the Nothingness equipment set, which gave her a type of nothingness power that made her immune to most attacks. She could also make her body disappear, allowing her to carry out secret assassination missions. Wu Qing chose the Light equipment set, which gave her some light-type skills. It seemed that it was not appropriate for an assassin to have light-type skills, but it depended on how she used them. For example, she could use the refraction, reflection, and scattering of light to escape assassinations, as well as healing effects. Lu Zhongchang chose the Terror equipment set, which was a mental-type legacy. However, it focused on the skills of fear, which could cause enemies to fall into a state of fear every day, making them unable to sleep at night. It would slowly torture them before killing them. Tuobiqing, who Zhao Fu valued the most, chose the blood equipment set, which gave her a type of blood-type ability that allowed her to use blood to recover and kill. As long as she had blood, she would be in a semi-undying state, which was quite overpowered. Finally, out of the 12 assassin equipment sets, only the battle equipment set, kill equipment set, and battle equipment set remained. Just like the blood equipment set, they were quite powerful, so it would be quite difficult for them to find suitable owners. However, this was already quite good. The 9-piece assassin equipment set already had an owner. Tuobiqing, who Zhao Fu valued quite a bit, had also chosen the powerful blood equipment set. Zhao Fu looked forward to her growth. After all, she was an SSS grade person just like Bai Qi, so she had incredible growth potential. Following this, Zhao Fu took the 4 of them back to the Qin town and had them get used to this power and raise their cultivations. When he had some spare S-grade orbs, Zhao Fu would help Wu Ling and the others prepare one. Following this, Bai Qi led the exploration team back to the Qin town. Bai Qi went to Zhao Fu's side and gave him a simple report about the Xianbei village. After hearing this, Zhao Fu felt quite delighted. After obtaining so many captives, the population of the Qin town was now a bit more than 46,000, and it was slowly catching up to the system main cities. At the same time, Bai Qi handed the Xianbei tear to Zhao Fu. Zhao Fu took the Xianbei tear and looked at it. He felt that it was not very useful, so he put it away in his spatial ring. At that moment, Li Si brought a Xianbei elder and a few beautiful Xianbei women into the room. Li Si first bowed before saying, "Your Majesty, they want to see you." Hearing this, Zhao Fu nodded and turned his gaze to the Xianbei old man and the beautiful girls. At that moment, the Xianbei elder and a few beautiful young women knelt down and spoke in a language that Zhao Fu could not understand. This was most likely the Xianbei language, but because they had already submitted, Zhao Fu was able to understand what they were saying. What they meant was, "Your Highness, we have completely submitted to you and will live under your glorious light. We are willing to serve you with our most beautiful women. Please accept us, Your Highness." After hearing their words, Zhao Fu understood the culture of the Outlander race. He knew that they would offer beautiful women to the person who conquered them because they lived in a world where the strong preyed on the weak. Their lives were quite wild, which was different from Chinese culture. Zhao Fu wanted to refuse because he already had a few female attendants by his side, and he was quite used to them. However, Zhao Fu's reaction caused the Xianbei elder's face to pale. If Zhao Fu did not accept, it would mean that the Xianbei people would not have good days in the future. Li Si understood what Zhao Fu was thinking and knew that Zhao Fu needed to get used to this, so he said, "Your Highness, you should accept them. It'll be good for the people's hearts." Hearing this, Zhao Fu thought for a moment before nodding and accepting the Xianbei women. The Xianbei elder smiled and left with Li Si. Following this, Zhao Fu and Bai Qi chatted for a while. Bai Qi continued to lead his soldiers to explore the outside world, while Zhao Fu planned to head to Battle City. After a few days, the restaurant and merchant alliance had officially opened. The restaurant's business was quite good, and it was roughly the same as the Westfall restaurant in Holy Light City. As soon as the restaurant opened, the various factions in Little Valley became wary. They all paid great attention to the restaurant that had suddenly appeared, and they sent people to ask about it, but they found nothing. They were incredibly envious of the restaurant's booming business, but it was a pity that their statuses weren't high enough, so they could only watch. However, as time passed, they quickly developed, and it wouldn't be long before they could raise their statuses to barons. Now, there wasn't much time left for Zhao Fu, and the advantage of his status would gradually weaken. However, he couldn't rush things. Being able to open a path to the outer regions in 3 days was already quite good, and apart from Zhao Fu, no one else could do such a thing. Moreover, the biggest advantage in business was no longer the restaurant but the merchant alliance. Recently, many people had seen many strange things on the streets that they had never seen before, and they definitely didn't exist in this region. This not only attracted the attention of countless indigenous residents, but it also attracted the attention of countless players. Now that the Merchant Alliance was a massive money-making machine, they began to sell all sorts of goods. As such, many similar scenes occurred. For example, when Zhao Fu sold the black forest fruits that he had planted in Little Valley, countless people came up to him and asked curiously, "Boss, what fruit is this? What fruit is this? How does it taste?" The person in charge of selling the black forest fruits replied, "This is a black forest fruit that can only be found in the Forest of Horrors. It can't be found anywhere else." Just this was enough to attract many people's attention. After all, they knew that the Forest of Horrors was in the neighboring region, and this was the first time they had seen something from the outer regions. Could it be that someone had crossed the border? Countless people continued to ask. The person selling the black forest fruits laughed, and said that he was just selling the black forest fruits and didn't know anything about this. Seeing that he didn't know anything, no one continued to ask. Instead, they looked at the black forest fruits and said, "Boss, how much are these black forest fruits? I want to try them." The person selling the black forest fruits picked up 2 black forest fruits and handed them to the person, saying, "2 copper coins for one. It's the first time we're selling, so just 3 copper coins will do." What? Everyone was startled. Rare items were expensive, and ordinary items that were rare would seem precious. No one had expected black forest fruits from the outer regions to be sold so cheaply. They had thought that they would be worth at least 10 or so copper coins each. Zhao Fu didn't charge a very high price for these ordinary items, and he chose to sell them at a low profit. There were simply too many of these things, so he didn't have to worry about running out of stock. As long as they were sold, everything would be fine. Moreover, Zhao Fu had already made a lot of money. Chapter 147. This was only one of the many businesses under the Merchant Alliance's jurisdiction. Apart from the Merchant Alliance's many industries, there were also special foods, clothes, ordinary herbs, and all sorts of materials. The appearance of the restaurant made the various factions wary, but the appearance of the Merchant Alliance made them feel a great sense of danger. After all, the Merchant Alliance's benefits were simply too great, and not only did the various factions pay great attention to it, but even the system's governmental factions also paid great attention to it. Countless gazes fell on the Misty Rain Merchant Alliance, but the Misty Rain Merchant Alliance ignored these gazes and continued to make money in a low-profile manner. It did not show any danger and acted like a merchant, and it even gave the various factions some benefits. This made the various factions feel quite surprised and delighted. The Merchant Alliance's appearance was beneficial to them, and the relationship between the two sides was not as tense as before. They got along quite well, which was what Zhao Fu wanted. If one wanted to be a qualified merchant, they had to make themselves seem harmless and harmonious in order to do business well. However, the various factions all tried to guess who the Misty Rain Merchant Alliance belonged to. However, because they did not have any information, they were unable to make any accurate guesses. As such, they could only list the Misty Rain Merchant Alliance as a mysterious faction that could not be offended and had to be on good terms with. Zhao Fu was quite pleased with how the Misty Rain Merchant Alliance was operating. Now, the Misty Rain Merchant Alliance spanned across 4 regions: the Forest of Horrors, Little Valley, 100 Bamboo, and Red Plum Plains. In order to attract attention, Zhao Fu had set up the Misty Rain Merchant Alliance's headquarters in Little Valley, but in secret it was set up in Qin Town. Currently, the profit from each region, including the restaurant, was slightly more than 7,000 gold coins. Although 7,000 gold coins didn't seem like a lot, if the 4 regions were added together, it would be 28,000 gold coins. If converted to copper coins, that would be 280 million, and if converted to real money, that would be 2.8 billion. This was just the total profit from a single day. As they developed more and more regions, their profits would become greater and greater. Now that they had so much money, Zhao Fu directly swept up energy stones from all of the system main cities and spent 10,000 gold coins to gather 1,000 energy stones. Regarding the spirit refining plan, Zhao Fu had always been thinking about it. Now that he had the spar, the plan could not be carried out, because there were still a few important factors missing. Zhao Fu was not ready for the time being, and he had not found what he had been looking for. Therefore, even if he had the spar, the plan could not be carried out for the time being. Only after Zhao Fu found that thing could he really start. After checking on the merchant group situation, Zhao Fu went to Battle City and went to the arena to check on Gunia. By now, Zhao Fu had discovered that Gunia had become one of the most famous gladiators in Battle City. Anyone who hadn't heard of the Sword Demon by now definitely wasn't from Battle City. Every time he appeared, the arena would be filled to the brim. It was evident just how popular he was. The reason why these people liked Gunia was because they liked the thrill of seeing him kill people of a higher cultivation. They were incredibly amazed by Gunia's supreme sword skills, and they were also shocked by his talent. He had only cultivated for a few days, yet he had instantly jumped to stage 0 to 4. This speed was simply unimaginable. It wasn't just Battle City. Countless factions and even the system's governmental factions took a liking to him. They extended all sorts of olive branches and promised him all sorts of benefits, but they were all rejected by him. Countless people started to investigate everything they could about Gunia, wanting to find out his true identity, where he came from, and what faction he belonged to. However, they were unable to find out anything. All they knew was that on a bright and sunny morning, he was brought to the arena by a mysterious black-cloaked figure, and his legend began. After 50 or so duels, no one had been able to force Gunia to take off his cloak, nor had anyone seen what the Sword Demon looked like. This made Gunia even more mysterious, and there was even a legend that no one knew what the Sword Demon looked like because everyone who had seen him had died. Zhao Fu could only smile and go to the big man in the arena. This was the big man that Zhao Fu had met when he had first come to the arena. By now, Zhao Fu knew that his name was Zhengli, and Zhao Fu smiled as he said, "Brother Zheng, how have you been?" When Zhengli heard this voice, he turned and saw that it was Zhao Fu. He was delighted, and he smiled as he said, "So it's Brother Zhao. Come, have a seat. It's Sword Demon's turn soon." Zhengli gave Zhao Fu a VIP seat in the arena, and his attitude was extremely good. After all, to others, it seemed like he had discovered the genius Sword Demon, and because of Gunia's shocking performance, his status in the arena had gradually risen. Only Dengli knew that he was just lucky that he had managed this area. If it wasn't for Zhao Fu's insistence, he really wouldn't have discovered Gunia's swordsmanship genius. Hearing this, Zhao Fu sat down, wanting to see how much Gunia had changed over the past few days. Following this, Gunia walked into the arena. He was still wearing his black cloak, but his aura was even more powerful and cold. As he walked into the arena, countless people started to excitedly yell his name, and the arena became incredibly lively. What surprised Zhao Fu was Gunia's opponent. Gunia's opponent was a big, boorish man who wore simple clothes made of beast hide and had a beard. From his appearance, it was possible to tell that he was a Xiongnu. Can these outsiders enter the system main cities? Or was this Hun Nu captured? Zhao Fu felt quite confused. There had been many enmity between the Xiongnu people and Great Qin in history, and it could be said that they were very powerful enemies. As such, Zhao Fu felt quite confused about the appearance of an outsider in a system main city, and he only found out after asking Zhengli. It turned out that in order to increase the number of people in the arena, Battle City's city lord allowed these outsiders, and even some outlanders, to enter the system main cities. It was truly a different place with different policies. When comparing player factions to factions in the wilderness, player factions couldn't compare to factions in the wilderness. However, player factions had the support of system main cities, and they could increase their strength through all sorts of transactions. For example, they could buy good equipment, healing potions, and all sorts of support items. Now that this advantage was gone, most of the players in Little Abyss Valley were in dire straits. Zhao Fu turned his gaze back to the duel. The Xiongnu soldier looked at Gunia and felt an indescribable sense of disgust. He raised his scimitar and ferociously attacked Gunia. Gunia understood that he was facing a Xiongnu soldier and did not hold back. The duel quickly concluded. After the Xiongnu died, Gunia left amidst the cheers of the crowd. Zhao Fu saw that Gunia had improved so quickly, so he decided to keep him here. After chatting with him for a bit, Zhao Fu returned to Qin village. Chapter 148. The method of opening the passageway was the same as before, and needless to say, the ground of East Green was covered in bright green moss. There were relatively few trees, but there were many streams here. Sometimes it was surrounded by clouds and mist, making it look like a fairyland. It was a very beautiful place. East Green had 4 system main cities: Southbright City, Heavenstone City, Ninesun City, and Ruoshui City. Just like before, Zhao Fu walked around the system main cities and found that the specialty of this place was a type of clearwater fish. This fish lived in many of East Green's creeks, and it looked like a normal grass carp. However, it was slightly smaller, and its flesh was incredibly delicious and tender, making it very popular. After looking at these specialties, Zhao Fu went back to his main business, which was to buy real estate and open restaurants. After walking around the 4 system main cities, Zhao Fu found that there were fewer players in Heavenstone City than in the other 3 system main cities, but he didn't know why. After buying the property, Zhao Fu hired people to renovate it and prepare for the business. After taking care of these things, Zhao Fu started to send out the intelligence department, Eternal Night, to all of the system main cities to gather information from all sides. The person who was the happiest about this was undoubtedly Lu Mei, as Zhao Fu had placed the most restrictions on her. Because Guo Binglin, Wang Ergu, and a few others were directly under the Eternal Night Intelligence Department, they could use teleportation channels as they pleased. However, Zhao Fu had restricted Lu Mei to only use teleportation channels, so every time she saw Zhao Fu, she would look quite unhappy. Now that Zhao Fu wasn't restricting her anymore, she could finally use teleportation channels as she pleased to go to the system main cities. She was incredibly happy. However, Zhao Fu had reminded her that if she couldn't complete her quests or got into trouble, she would be restricted again. Lu Mei immediately acted obedient and said a lot of good things about Zhao Fu. This caused Wang Ergu to blush with shame. Where did that domineering, barbaric, and fiery second-in-command go? When did you become even better at flattering people than me? The Eternal Night Society would set up a small branch in every system main city, and it would be made up of 10 or so people. In order to keep their identities hidden, Zhao Fu did not allow them to come into contact with Qin's faction. They were an independent organization, and right now, they were mainly gathering information and did not have any assassination missions. Next, Zhao Fu took out a map of the Heaven Awakened world and looked at it seriously. Now that the Forest of Horrors had been cleared in all 4 directions, it was time to prepare a plan and strategy for the future. Within Holy Light City, Jiang Feng walked into the cloth shop and looked at Jiang Ro, who was doing her accounts, and he said with a look of concern, "Little Ro, you're quite busy. Leave the accounting to someone else. You have enough things to do, so don't tire yourself out." Hearing this, Jiang Ro stopped and raised her head to look at Jiang Feng, slightly frowning. She knew that her big brother would not come to find her for no reason, and she knew that he was just pretending to care about her. As such, she calmly replied, "Big brother, it's fine. Why are you looking for me?" Seeing that Jiang Ro did not appreciate his kindness, Jiang Feng felt quite awkward, but he still said, "It's nothing much. I just wanted to ask how the clothing store's business is doing." "Not bad. The clothing store is quite famous now, and many higher-level factions in the system main cities are making clothes here. We make around 50 gold coins a day," Jiang Ro replied. Hearing this, Jiang Feng felt quite delighted and said, "Lil Ro, you know that the relationship between the Jiang family and the Zhou family is quite strained. I don't need to go into detail about the reasons, but the Zhou family seems to have found a legatee. Right now, the Jiang family situation is quite dangerous, and I heard that Zhao Xian hasn't come to find you in a long time. I want to buy 500 sets of blue-grade equipment for the Jiang family's elites, so I'll leave this matter to Zhao Xian." Jiang Ro understood her big brother's intentions. He wanted to push her to Zhao Xian and rely on Zhao Xian's faction to resist the Zhou family. At the same time, it would be easier for her to meet Zhao Xian and obtain some benefits from him. 500 sets of blue-grade equipment were split into 2 pieces, 1 weapon and 1 armor. 500 sets of blue-grade equipment meant that there were 1,000 pieces of blue-grade equipment. Right now, an ordinary piece of blue-grade equipment was sold for 300 to 500 silver coins. 1,000 pieces of blue-grade equipment would cost at least 300,000 silver coins, which was the cheapest price the Jiang family could afford. As such, Jiang Ro wanted her to go to Zhao Xian. "I'm not going," Jiang Ro said coldly after understanding Jiang Feng's intentions. She wasn't just angry at the Jiang family for pushing her to Zhao Fu like a tool, but she didn't want Zhao Fu to see her as such a woman. Facing Jiang Ro's refusal, Jiang Feng didn't panic, and he started to use the dangers of his family, his parents, and the Zhou family to persuade her. In the end, Jiang Ro agreed. After hearing Jiang Ro agree, Jiang Feng smiled and turned to leave. Jiang Ro lowered her head and stealthily wiped away the tears at the corners of her eyes. "Jiang Ro, what is it?" Zhao Fu lightly smiled and asked Jiang Ro, who was sitting next to him. "Zhao Xian, I want to buy some equipment here." Jiang Ro felt as if she couldn't say it out loud, and she paused for a while, looking quite conflicted. Hearing this, Zhao Fu smiled and nodded as he said, "Sure. How many do you want?" Hearing Zhao Fu's words, Jiang Ro looked up at Zhao Fu and deeply breathed in as she said, "I want 500 sets of blue-grade equipment. Can you give me a discount?" "Ha!" Zhao Fu couldn't help but laugh when he saw how embarrassed and nervous Jiang Ro looked. So that was what she had come for, so he replied, "Sure. I'll give you a 40% discount." Jiang Ro let out a sigh of relief, and felt incredibly grateful, but also a bit ashamed. Zhao Xian had treated her so well, yet she had shamelessly come to him to take advantage of him. Her beautiful eyes became a bit moist. Seeing Jiang Ro like this, Zhao Fu asked caringly, "What is it?" Jiang Ro held back her tears and shook her head, indicating that she was fine. Zhao Fu felt that there was something going on with Jiang Ro, but it wasn't appropriate for him to ask. At that moment, the soldiers reported that there was something for him to take care of, so Zhao Fu could only apologize to Jiang Ro. Just as he was about to leave, he suddenly said, "Thank you so much." Just as he was about to leave, Jiang Ro suddenly said as she lowered her head. Hearing this, Zhao Fu stopped and said, "No need, aren't we friends? If you need anything, I'll do my best to help you. You don't owe me anything, and perhaps I'll need your help in the future." Hearing this, Jiang Ro felt the knot in her heart untie. When she grew up, she hoped that she would be able to help Zhao Fu one day. She raised her head and smiled at Zhao Fu. "You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.